Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast, is brought to you by, well, you. If you want to learn how to support our show, go to patreon.com/laststandmedia.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another helping of Sacred Symbols Plus. I'm Brad Ellis. I'm hosting this one. We're doing just so you know, we're doing a Stellar Blade Spoilercast review discussion. The hot game, Eve. Very hot also. Joining me is Dustin Furman, resident weeb expert. What's up, Dustin?
What's up? I've been out. My grandparents invited me to go yard sailing today. And it was very, they had like, my grandpa has XM radio and he had the golden 60s radio blasting.
Oh, hell yeah.
Nice.
The whole time. I didn't really find anything, but it was a nice time to hang out. Maybe I didn't get back until I left at 9, didn't get back till 12:31. So a lot of time out there.
It's a lot of time.
I didn't find anything. That's okay. Had a good time. And now just, it's Friday. Just wrapping up the week with talking about some beta energy. So I'm ready to go.
Also joining us is our resident gooning expert also, Gene Park. Hello, Gene.
You could just say a resident Korean and it'll actually be less offensive than resident Goonie. But yes, I am known as the network's resident horn dog. So there is that.
Dude,
I'm not the one with like the girls in the jars though, as Dustin
that's
is.
true.
So, yeah.
Oh,
I don't have any of that going on.
That's true.
I just like girls. I'm like that fucking Joe Cat animation or whatever. Remember that poor guy that got canceled for his animation where he just talked about all the different types of women he likes, and everyone was like,
No.
"Oh, it's so cringe."
No, I don't remember that. What the fuck?
Yeah, it's just like he just made a song about how much he likes like different types of girls, and then like everyone was like, "Oh, that's so cringe." He's
like a Beach Boy song? That's a Beach Boy song.
Pretty much. It's like
it's like California Girls.
Yeah,
that's pretty much what it is. Yeah, and it's just everyone like canceled him, I guess. And it's like he just talked about how much he likes girls. It's insane. Anyways,
silly, ridiculous.
Don't become that. You can like girls.
Yeah, you can like girls.
It was Jan and Dean that said two girls for every boy, right? That was the song.
That's right. Yeah.
That like old 60s rock song.
Mm-hmm.
They had the right idea, did they not?
Do you think that's still the case? Does it feel like that there's more women in the world right now?
I think there literally are, but I think it doesn't ever feel like that. No.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because the men are so fucking loud all the time.
True. And of course,
peace and quiet, right, Colin?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I wish. Turns out not.
Yeah. Turns out not. And of course, our Cobra Commander, Colin Moriarty. What's up, dude?
Nothing, man. Thanks for being here. Thanks for hosting the show. Yeah, good to be here. So we started a little later today to accommodate some scheduling. And so I was outside walking the dogs a couple hours ago, and I was looking at the weather, and I'm like, looks like it's going to rain. It's not that hot. So I just randomly mowed the lawn and then took a quick shower and got in here. And so, yeah, I'm feeling good. Also very excited. I'm growing Walla Walla onions, and I got them started in little starter cups inside, and they are sprouting. So I'm very excited because I thought that they weren't going to work. And they do indeed work. So I'm really all into I've always liked flowers and plants and stuff, and I'm really like revving it up, in many ways right now. So I'm very excited.
You have a little green thumb now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. I have a thumb, and we'll see how it all turns out at the end of things. We tried to grow I like growing annuals because they just go away after a year and you can just try different things. But yeah, we grew squash last year. They came out pretty good and some other things. So yeah, I'm trying to get some stuff going here, some cash crops.
My first job was growing plants and growing like crops and everything. I used to grow tomatoes and basils.
Interesting.
Oh.
Yeah. In Orange County.
Wait, where?
In Fulton, at the Arboretum.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I was a greenhouse horticultural assistant. So I used to just grow all kinds of shit. It was great.
Gene, you never fail to surprise me just with random shit you've done.
It's funny that we mentioned the Beach Boys too, because like my favorite thing to do at that job was put on a Beach Boys CD in the sound system that plays across the park. Because I would just be there on the weekends and I'd be the only soul in the whole park, and I'd just be listening to Beach Boys the whole time while I'm fucking picking up coyote shit and growing tomatoes. Tomatoes.
Hell yeah, dude. But yes, we're here to talk about Stellar Blade. We've all finished it now. Gene, you reviewed it for Washington Post. So you played it a while ago.
I did.
And,
I forgot all of it.
Dustin, you blazed through this game, I feel like. You did everything quickly.
Yeah, I think it took me about 2 weeks to fully platinum.
Oh.
You got a platinum. Nice.
Got the plat. That's right.
Nice. Hell yeah.
It's a pretty easy plat, though, right? I feel like Colin would go for it, too.
Yeah.
It's like collectibles mostly, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it is doable. You can theoretically do it in one playthrough, but you really need to do it in two.
Yeah.
And because
I
you
think
need
you have to do it in two.
well,
Because of the Lily bar.
right, but there's a yeah, it's true, but there is like on Power Picks there is like a flow chart that will show you what to do with the PlayStation Cloud and like your saves in order to like only do it one time.
Yeah. You can save scum it.
Yeah, but you're right, because of the Lily stuff. Like they have you stop at the point, do everything up to the point of no return, send your save to the cloud, then beat the game, then go back to the point of no return, get everything, then go. So it's efficient actually, but it's not the ideal way to play it. So I'm not going to do that. But I am probably going to get the platinum as well. But I'm not even close to it yet. I have a lot of things to do. Still.
Yeah, I don't think I'll go for the platinum, but I was tempted. Definitely, it's definitely
I'm a
attainable.
little tempted.
Yeah, a little tempted. Maybe a little break, then I'll come back to it or something like that. But Colin, I'm really curious about your thoughts of the game because I don't know your opinion at all about this. You recently just finished it, so please, Colin, just tell me your general thoughts about your experience with this game.
Yeah, sure. Well, I talked a little bit about it on Sacred, so people already know some of the things, but I hadn't beaten it at that point. When we talked about it, I love this game. I think this game is fantastic, and there's very little actually not to like about it if you just take it for what it is, which I think is the way I would describe it is like a turn of the generation PS2 to PS3 style action game where you have a little bit of breadth, but not really, and when I say breadth, I'm talking about in terms of like the scope of the game. It's very manageable, 20 hours maybe if you just do the golden path. I don't know that you would survive very long because you would need a lot of things that you would, or at least I wouldn't, but probably do it in like 15 hours or less. I did everything I could except for fishing, and I know that there are quests that I'm missing because I went and looked at the side quest list on Power Picks and I wrote them down. So I'm missing like 10 quests, but I have no idea where they are. Like there's no exclamation points or what I'm supposed to do. So in a kind of organic way, I just was like, no, fuck it. The point of no return, and I know what you're talking about now, Dustin, when you say there are 2 points of no return. I got to the first point of no return, sent my save to the cloud, shut automatic cloud saving off. So I have this like pristine save before that moment, and I'm going to go back to that and start cleaning things up and beat it from that point, I think, if I can. But in short, I really, really love it. I think it reminds me a lot of Ninja Gaiden for some reason, or just like Devil May Cry or something. Like I understand why people are saying it's a Soulsborne game, but what I said to Dustin, because we were discussing this on Sacred Symbols, is it's missing a key component of those kinds of games, which is consequence.
The punishment.
And, right. Yeah. There's no punishment for dying, really. In fact, you can make it work for you.
Yes.
Especially if you're grinding trophies or grinding experience or whatever. And in that regard, the game never really was able to annoy me, even though I wasn't very good at it. There were times where I beat bosses the first time, even late in the game when people were saying the bosses were starting to get hard. And then there were times where I would die on a boss 10 times or have to use the revive move or whatever. But the game gives you so many different ways, especially if you take the time to upgrade your character to just last a really long time.
You can revive twice too if you need to, if you upgrade it. Yeah.
Right, exactly. And so I will admit at the very, very end, when you get to like the Atom parts, I dropped out the story mode because I fought them once or twice and I'm like, I'm really enjoying myself right now. And I have this feeling now that this is going to annoy the fuck out of me. So I'm just going to go through this and beat it. Very glad I did that, especially because I can kind of do it in a more normal mode way my second time through when I have more strength, more beta energy. I have plenty of beta energy in real life, I mean. But, and Taki energy and all that kind of stuff. Like I'll be in better shape and then I'll try to do it the right way. So I did drop the difficulty at the very end, not because I wasn't even flabbergasted by how hard the boss was. I was just like, I have this strange feeling that I'm going to fucking throw my controller through the screen in an hour if I'm still doing this fight, when I really had a pretty fluid way through the game so far. And thus, I'm just going to circumvent that and enjoy the ending. So that's how I did it.
I did it too,
so,
by the way.
Yeah.
I dropped it down to story mode at the last boss too. I was out because I did it exactly the same way you did, Colin, or as you mentioned, where I missed a lot of stuff. So I ended the game with only 5 heals. So I was like, okay,
okay.
Yeah. So like I was giving myself hard mode for some reason already. So I was like, okay, let me just drop it to story mode. But yeah.
Yeah, Gene, talk to me.
I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry. No. So Colin, finish your thoughts, man.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say I had only 60 of the healing item thing, so I was just one up above that. But you can like circulate into your other healing items, which I just like. I never bought anything in the game ever. I have so much money.
You don't need to except ammo, pretty much.
Yeah. I think I might have bought ammo a couple times, but even when you need to use your gun, and that's actually is a complaint. I would have loved to see a version of this game where there is unlimited ammo. Maybe nerf some of the stronger gun types or ammo types, or just not even have them, but have like a pistol and shotgun choice and just have endless gun ammo. I would have loved to have seen how that worked. Right. Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah. So
I would have. Sorry, I was gonna say I would have liked if you had ammo count, but it resets when you rest or whatever at a camp. Because just going to the shop, I had so much money, it didn't even matter. Like buying ammo, like it didn't matter to my money, my amount of money I had. I didn't feel like losing it at all. It didn't seem like it wasn't something I thought about. I was like, oh, just quick refill. It just kind of became redundant after a while, I feel like.
Yeah, the economy's broken in the game for sure. Like, and maybe that's what they intended. I had like $125,000 or something when I beat the game. Like, and there's nothing to really buy except for like suit upgrades and stuff like that. But yeah, so there are little problems with it, but I think it's a really pretty fantastic game and it's impressive. And one note, we can get to this later because it's not that important, but I did note this on Sacred, and I would love to know what Brad and Gene think about this too, is little weird thing. Sony doesn't own this IP.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I went and looked because I noticed on the splash screen immediately it said copyright Shift Up, published by Sony, right? I was like, So I went on the trademark search, and lo and behold, Shift Up owns the trademark to Stellar Blade. And if you go look at the trademarks for any other second party game that you can really think of, it's always Sony. Dustin brought up the point of like Returnal was a second party game when that was being developed. Even Fair Games and Concord were second party games technically when they began, and then they bought those teams. I'm pretty sure Sony owns Fizzint, right? And they own Death Stranding. I even looked at weird obscure games like Deresine from recent memory, like second party games. Sony owns all the IP for all of those. So there is this interesting business aspect that I'd like to get to at some point about Stellar Blade, because I'm very curious about what the rules are going to be about this. And I think this all goes back into the fact that the game was announced as a multi-platform title. It is very unusual for that to happen, and then for a publisher to come in the first party. So I'm wondering if this is like a Titanfall 1 or Sunset Overdrive 1 situation where the potential sequels could come to other platforms, and this first game might be locked down by Sony. And if Sony was smart, and they are, and I'm sure this is happening, they would already have greenlit the sequel and said like, we'll publish a sequel now, which is Sunset Overdrive was, that was pitched to Microsoft and they turned it down. So that would be a major difference. So that's all. I'd like to get to that at some point because I do think that's an interesting.
Oh yeah, we'll get to that
thing.
You brought up Sunset Overdrive, man. I wish we got a sequel. That game, if it got a sequel, it could have been so much better too. I love the first one, but it could have been way better.
That's low key got to be one of the PlayStation games that's going to come from Xbox, right? I mean, that would just make some amount of sense. I don't know.
It's like, are they going to even bother because it's so old? I just don't know.
I just feel like it's a really interesting way to manipulate PlayStation players into giving you some money for a game that they're going to be excited about because it's from their own developer. And it's kind of like this bespoke game that it's the only game basically that they ever made of any consequence that's not on PlayStation. So to say like, oh, it's kind of like dangle it with a nice PlayStation blog post and a trailer. And maybe, I don't know. I always think I've been thinking about that recently because I'm like, that seems like that would be an interesting one. You don't lose anything by doing that either. So
no. Gene, so you played the game a while ago. How are you feeling about the game now after so much time away from it?
Still good. I still really enjoyed it. It's not a game that I'm not going to go back to in a while, but I've been thinking about going back and completing it at least because I really, really just love the combat. I think the combat is so So crunchy. It's really one of the best combat systems. I think the final fight. So we're all in spoiler free territory, right?
Yep.
So the final 3 fights with Raven and Tacky. Well, really the fights really start to escalate in quality when you hit Tacky, which was not a surprise. The fucking review embargo guidelines were like, don't spoil that you fight Tacky. I'm like, I knew that we were gonna fight Tacky. Like, it makes no sense that we named this character Tacky and then she dies and then we never see her body. And so when I saw Tacky, I was like, okay, well, here we go. And then, but I was like, oh, the story is being so predictable again, right? And then the fight happened, and I was like, I was electrified by the fight. This is so fun. My favorite kinds of fights in video games are the one-on-one fight where you're fighting the like another version of yourself, basically, like Dante and Virgil, right? That's the classic matchup. So Tacky, Eve versus Tacky, and then eventually Eve versus Raven. Oh my god, both Raven fights in the monster form and the human form were just excellent. So it's just really the combat system that really shines through. I think overall the overall design of the game does betray a little bit of their experience. That is clearly the first time they've ever made a game this big. So it does feel like that they throw in a bunch of stuff that they think will work in a big game. Just to have it, right? So there's block puzzles, there's math puzzles. Fucking Koreans have to put in math in your video game.
I was like, fuck.
I was like, are you fucking kidding me? You fucking nerds, That's real Asian representation. Fuck Ubisoft and their Assassin's Creed, Just put a math puzzle in your action game. But I actually like the math puzzle, by the way. I thought that was actually pretty cool. Actually, some of the puzzles were actually kind of fun, like in a stupid way, where like the stratagem direction and numeric.
Oh yeah, I like those. Yeah,
I actually like those. They're very stupid, but like like it activates the monkey brain, and I'm just like, yeah, ooh, I love this, And then the thing unlocks, and you get prizes. Colin mentioning ammo is great. Because I think that showcases again a little bit of their inexperience, where they didn't really know how to manage their economy, the ammo economy. It was weird that you can't just like stock ammo because enemies are always dropping ammo, or you're always opening up chests with ammo, but then you're usually filled with ammo, so it's just a bunch of trash left all over the game. And you just don't pick it up. And
it must be. You would think it's a balance thing, right? Like they must have not engineered the combat under the assumption that you would just have access to basically free ammo. They at least make you, like Brad said, buy it. So there's got to be some reason, because I agree with you. It is annoying. Like I would always pulse and you'd see the items around you and you're like, Jesus, this is like...
Yeah, and then you go to them
and bullets I'm bleeding
like, oh, fuck, shotgun shells. I never shot the shotgun anyways, right? So,
damn.
Yeah, so like to Colin's point, like I didn't really use a lot of the various versions of the guns. I mean, I kind of did sometimes, and they were really, really useful in terms of, I think Colin mentioned that in an earlier episode that shooting was a kind of a cheat code, right? Did you shoot a lot, Colin?
Yeah, it's like, I feel like, well, first of all, it comes in handy to like down people's shields, in my opinion, like to get rid of, to do little chip down, like literal chip damage.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's not as like limited as Bloodborne or something, but it's not like... Where maybe it's this, Gene, and I think you can appreciate this. I feel like this game is so much. This game's got Vanquish spirit in a lot of different ways. Where I'm like, I kind of just wanted to shoot shit.
Yeah.
Or to slide around on her knees.
Because I love Vanquish. Like I fucking love Vanquish.
Cool game.
And,
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Colin's game taste has just risen exponentially in my mind.
Yeah, I mean that's my favorite. That's like one of my favorite shooters, and I think that like an iconic game. I loved it from the very beginning, and I was so amped when they brought it back. Remember in 2020 they re-released it, and I played it again. And I was like, damn! And that's another game. It's like perfect length, really difficult, cool time trials, like things to do. This game's an evolution of that, but it feels like that.
Yeah,
it feels like a lot of other games too.
I'm just glad to hear Colin beat it too and had fun, because I think now, Colin, you're really ready for Souls-like games, because I think this game isn't as hard as Souls-likes, and you're absolutely right. You're nailing on the head that the lack of consequence is a huge factor. And And because, like you said, sometimes it works in your favor. Sometimes it's better to just throw Eve off a cliff and restart.
Right. Yeah. If I want to go back to like my last like save point, I often would just die on purpose.
Yeah. And then she'll have a little scream that cuts off like cartoonishly, which is hilarious. She'll be like, ah! And then like you just restart. It's really weird how they decided to cut off her scream like right as it's like beginning, but it makes it so funny. But it's always really fun to do. I thought the story was for Stellar Blade was stupid until it got better at the end. I think the writing is just awful. The moment the back and forth dialogue writing, whereas it's Adam is like, oh, classic Eve, and it's like, dude, we just met like an hour ago. You can't say classic Eve. There's no history for you to be able to make that declaration. And then we meet Lily, who's been trapped in a fucking box for 2 years, and then like the next day she's like, oh, typical Eve. I'm like, we don't even fucking know you. You know what the fuck is this? So like, and then some characters don't make any sense. Roxanne, her dialogue never made any sense. Like Eve hated her for some reason.
She was always hating on Eve.
Yeah,
and
was she hitting on Eve?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I maybe I should be flirting with ChatGPT more to be able to kind of get.
Well,
that sense.
I'm not saying it was good, but it was there.
Yeah, I mean, so the back and forth dialogue didn't make any sense. My favorite NPC in the whole town of Zion is Barry, the fish vendor. He has no side quests attached to him. There's nothing going on with Barry. But all he does is go, oh, Angel, how are you? I'm selling fish, and the Angel and Eve is like, oh, what are you doing, Barry? You know, it's and
he has some side quests. I think he'll ask you to catch some fish.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Is those were some of the ones I found out I was missing, and he does become involved because I was wondering that too. Like,
okay, see, I completely missed the Barry side quest. I guess
yeah, because I tried fishing for a few minutes. I know it's probably very simple. Ultimately, when you know how to do it. Because like Tales of Arise, I just had to do all the fishing in that earlier in the year, and I was like, oh my god! And then it wasn't really that big of a deal. And I'm sure it's the same thing here. You want to talk about Asians and their game things? It's like, what's going on with the fishing in video games?
I hate fishing mini games, man. I don't
Japanese
know why.
And now Korean games.
Every game has a fishing mini game. I don't understand it. Fucking Sonic the Hedgehog, which is why I actually compare Stellar Blade to Sonic Frontiers quite a bit.
Cool. Interesting.
Similar stories about ancient civilizations and lost humanity. Similar laser puzzles where you have to redirect the lasers to make a thing. A lot of block puzzles. Similar vibes. The music is also similar too.
Oh, the music is so good.
Music's so good though. But the music in Sonic Frontiers is also really good too.
Yeah, I believe that. I mean, that music was the best, dude. I think the music in the Genesis Sonic games is like the best part of the games. Yeah, those games.
Michael Jackson
rock
anyway, so you know.
Yeah. I know, like I could still like hear those songs, you know, fucking rocking out. And there's like awesome rock, like in metal versions of those that are really great.
But the music in Stellar Blade is amazing. Like 10/10, perfect soundtrack. I'm kind of upset that they're waiting until summer to release the soundtrack. I don't know why it's taking that long, but I'm really looking forward to that.
It's a Persona level soundtrack, in my opinion. Like,
some tracks,
Nier,
fucking Roxanne's, well, obviously Nier, but Roxanne's theme song sounds exactly like a Persona song. Like I would just forget that I'm not playing a Persona game when I'm hanging at the R shop. You know,
it's at the hard R shop. It's important to note. With the music, just from my own play style, is usually when I get involved in these kinds of games that are like have lots of downtime and you're just doing things, is I would often just put an earbud in, listen to it with my ear, and then just like listen to a podcast or whatever. And I was so smitten with the music that I virtually never did that. Like I really just did play this game like a normal person, which is just, it's very strange for me because I just don't do that. And I did do that with like Persona 4 Golden. It's the same thing. And that's an even more trite game when you think about it, where it's like, Jesus. But I loved it. I listen to those goddamn songs when I'm working out. And yeah, I think some of the songs I found on Spotify, but they're like from the different artist page, like someone made some playlist or something where you can get some of them, but it's not all of them. But yeah, the music's so good.
It is funny you mentioned that you didn't listen to podcasts, because for me, Stellar Blade was a great podcast game. I love the music, but when I was sweeping up all the open world areas, like the desert and the second desert, Which the second desert is a fantastic open world area space. I love it, and we can talk more about that later. But while I was doing all those side quests, just cleaning up the bulletin board quests, killing monsters and stuff, I was listening to Sacred Symbols a lot. I was listening to a lot of podcasts.
Right on. Right on. Appreciate that.
Dustin, please share your thoughts, man, about the game overall.
Yeah. Well, I found that the more I played this game, the more I started to like it. I texted Gene probably a few hours in that first linear section. I'm like, man, this game's kind of boring. I think that first linear section is a little too long. So I'm like, what's even going on here?
It does kind of last for a little, like one or two sections a little long. Yeah.
Yeah.
But the construction zone, that last construction zone where you have to find the 3 keys, I was like, oh, come on.
Right. Well, and then you have to go into that tunnel system and raise the water level and all this stuff, and it's
God, man.
It's a little
the mini water temple. Yeah, you see, it's all these little puzzles that just kind of irritated me. They didn't last too long, but which is great. At least there was that.
Yeah, the interesting thing I would say about this game overall, talking about Shift Up and this being their first console outing, is that there are areas where they are punching way above their weight. I would say specifically the combat. It's like, wow, this doesn't feel like this should be your first game in terms of combat, because it's very fluid. There's all the different abilities. But then there's the other areas, like you guys mentioned economy. I totally agree with that it's like, could have used a little more time to figure this out. But there's all of these kind of like minor things. And I think, Colin, you'll especially start to realize this as you do your platinum run. And you might know about some of it now. I think I mentioned one on Sacred where the fast travel in this game is so annoying, especially when you're trying to hop around to different areas and do side quests where you have to, I guess you could go to like your ship thing and then go to a different, and you can then you don't have to go directly to Zion. But even then, it's like, if you want just getting around to the different points, it's like you have to go to a camp usually in order to fast travel. And then you can only fast travel to certain points. And if you want to get to another area, then you're going to have to kind of repeat this same rigmarole over and over. I would say too, also, Gene, you mentioned the story. I think the story does get a lot better as it goes on, but there's still there's just a bit of sloppiness, I think, to it, particularly when you get to some of the details around the end, because there's the whole story with Raven, and they bring up her that she was supposed to be in Eve's position where she was going to be the one that combined with Adam, but Adam rejected her. Like, that was kind of all thrown in there. I'm like, whoa, wait, well, hold on. Like, what was her relationship with Adam that made her so pissed off that she's going and murdering everybody in Zion? And it's kind of just briefly touched on that fight. Unless there's maybe there's like things I'm missing or codex or whatever, but it's like, I'm not totally sure about that. The last thing I'll just say is we're talking overall thoughts. I think this game, in hindsight, as I reflect on it a week or two later, it's not that it's void of originality in its style and its themes. I think that it wore its near inspiration too close, because when I think about it now, I'm like, man, this is kind of like, it sounds really like, I always joke on Sacred, like it's Aldi Near in some ways, where it's like Near, in my opinion, is like way superior story. You could tell that they were trying to go for some of these like big existential themes, in this post apocalypse, and it never got anywhere near those, no pun intended, anywhere near those heights to me. The music is also so directly Near inspired, and it's not that it's not good. I just, when I hear it, I'm like, it feels very much like, oh, let's replicate this thing that already exists that's very good. And, I think it's not that they don't bring anything new to the table in that means, but, when closer to release, the director was like doing these interviews with Yoko Taro and stuff. I'm like, okay, they're kind of priming. It's like, they're being honest about the inspiration here. But I think at some point, I think I told Eugene on Punching Up, there's the first point when you go down and you go into the futuristic area where they tell you about the war, the first war and stuff like that. I'm like, I've seen this before. This exact fucking moment happens in Nier, and then they do that moment multiple times throughout the game. I'm like, okay, it like follows a lot of the same beats in a lot of ways. So I don't know, maybe that's a negative to some or not.
It's funny just because through my own ignorance of Nier and Nier Automata, like I don't know any of that. You know, it's kind of like what I say about how I'm immune to Marvel dialogue because I don't watch Marvel movies. So when people are like, "Oh, the fucking Immortals of Avium sounds like a Marvel movie," I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. I liked it a lot. Right. You know? Like, so I have that similar sort of ignorance, I think, here.
I think that's
it makes me want to go back to Automata, you know, if that's true, because I could never get past that beginning part of Automata without it being like, I don't like this. So,
well, dude, hey, if you want a gun that with unlimited ammo,
I do.
Nier has
both in real life and in
the drone, games. Dude. I got so tired of holding that button down all the time.
Oh, fuck. Yeah. Well, I will say, I mean, Stellar Blade has better combat than Nier.
Yeah,
I think does have better combat than Nier. It does.
It does.
Yeah.
So I think that's why when Yoko Taro said this is a better game than Nier, he might have been referring to that, and also the
he said that.
He said, he said straight up, I think Stellar Blade is better than Nier Automata.
That's.
I mean, he always like puts his own shit down, so like that's his thing. But like he does say, I think Stellar Blade has so much more going on than Nier Automata does.
Well, he does seem like a fan of games to me, which is cool. You know,
I'm sorry, Colin. What was that?
I was just saying, Genie. I think he seems like he's always struck me as a fan of games. Yeah, which is cool. Yeah. So I appreciate that. I like the self-reflection on that. Yeah. Anyway, maybe I'll get back to that game for a fourth time. See what happens.
Just get past. Yeah. Is it the intro that you can't get past?
Yeah, like for some reason I just always
you can't save during that part. So that part that is annoying.
So dumb.
Yeah, that is annoying.
Yeah, like for some reason I'm just not into it, and then I'm just like, and I don't know. I've already written it down in my notes. I think I'll have to give that a go. I just feel like things are going to be a little slower for my personal taste later in the year, and so I do think I'll be able to slot in a few of these kinds of games.
Elden Ring.
I digress.
Elden Ring.
Oh my God.
I think you're ready for it, Colin. I think you are. I think you really are. I believe in you. Look at Kai Cenat. You know, he's beating it now.
Well, it's interesting, Justin. I wonder if Stellar Blade worked under the rules of Bloodborne or something, or Elden Ring. Like, would I? But it felt the same, right? So it was the same game, but like it had a experience system and an upgrade system based on things that you need to get from place to place. And all of the rest, and use it wisely, and you can't store it really. And I wonder if I would have just been like, I can't do this, because I did die pretty often in the game, but often I was just like, oh, that's totally my fault. Like I just started getting too careless. I do feel like the combat is a little unbalanced in the sense that this game has what, in my experience, Souls games don't have, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, which is like fodder. Right?
Yes.
There are enemies.
Yes.
Any enemy in my experience in Bloodborne could kill me, and did.
Yes.
You know, so in this game, I don't feel that way at all. There are like just a few really threatening creatures.
That's a huge difference too. That the jobbers in Stellar Blade, the trash mobs in Stellar Blade, probably won't kill you unless you're just not like paying attention or just playing badly, right? Whereas if you're just not careful in Elden Ring, like I'm playing Elden Ring right now, and I'm level 7. Like I tried my level 713 character. There are still enemies that are killing me in 5 hits. I'm level 713, the maximum level. Every stat is at 99, and I'm still finding enemies that can kill me in just like 4 or 5 hits. Like I just wasn't careful, you know. So yeah, that's a huge difference too.
Yeah. And I'm glad they did that. You know, for me. Now maybe there are people like Chris was saying that the game wasn't hard enough for him, especially because hard isn't unlocked until you beat the game, so which is fine. I don't think that that's a bad thing. But Chris, I think, is so efficient at these games, in my experience with him, that he was saying he was playing with like trying to make it harder by playing with the suit without armor and
that's right,
and doing things like that. And it's like that's exact opposite. Like I'm trying to inoculate myself from all possible dangers and feel good about myself, you know, as I go through the game. But it was really, really wonderful. Like it's funny because. Well, let me ask you guys this. I'm curious, like certainly an allegory at the center of this game, right? Is it about like racial tension, or like what do you think the game's trying to say, like about who's who and who's the originator and who's the you know, whose land, you know, who owns this place and where do you come from? And I don't know. I feel like at the last hour or so of the game, I'm like, holy shit, this game has gotten like pretty existential in a few hours. Really, it got pretty existential. I don't know if I'm overreading it, but I feel like there's something there.
Natiba is actually just a Korean romanization of natives. They They were originally called, the enemies were originally called natives, and then I guess they wisely decided to just switch over to Natiba.
Okay, I didn't know that. That's interesting. So that kind of actually frames it even more.
A little bit, yeah. I didn't even think about the racial component, but I think that you do have a point about land use. That there's probably parallels to Gaza and everything right now too. But Kim Hyung-tae, the director, said that this was all inspired by the labor strike by taxi drivers who are fearing to be replaced by AI taxi drivers, right?
Interesting.
For me, the way I read Stellar Blade is that it's about AI. Mother Sphere, the god of this world, is the AI. And the reason, and people, there's all this discourse about, there's no reason why Eve is sexy. Which, one, nobody needs to be a reason to be sexy. Sometimes people just are sexy; they don't even know it, And two, the reason why she's sexy is because Eve is part of this replacement race, of super women that were created to replace humans. Eve is part of that program. Natibas were the original humans, and they're the thrown out trash. And then Mother Sphere decided, hey, I can just make better humans this way. So as an AI, she decided, I can make better, more efficient, more beautiful, stupider humans, and then that will just be my replacement for the human race. So I feel like that's the original nucleus of where Stellar Blade came from. It's like, well, what if all of us got replaced by AI? So I think it's a relatively simple read, but I think that's where the story comes from.
Well, Gene, and too, I feel like that's kind of where, I don't want to get into near spoilers here, but a big question of that game is, what does it actually mean to be human?
Yeah.
Like, what does it mean to be alive? Is an AI with consciousness more or less human at this point in their evolution as AI or whatever? And this is kind of like, okay, well, there's the Natiba who have human DNA. So technically, from a biological standpoint, they are more human than, I don't know. I'm trying to remember what the Eve, like what they're actually called. They're like the replacement human race.
Andro-Eidos, I think?
Yeah, Andro-Eidos.
Andro-Eidos, yes.
Andro-Eidos. Okay. Anime fucking terms here.
Thank you, Brad, for writing that fucking random word down.
Yeah.
I completely forgot that word existed. Holy shit.
Yeah. So there's the Natiba that are made from human DNA. So it's like, are they more human, or is the Andro-Eidos more human because they were made from the image of humans long ago? It's like, okay, who has the right to exceed and live on? Or is there a third option, which is the true ending of the game where they combine? So similar themes.
Yeah, it shadows of Battlestar Galactica, which is kind of interesting to me too in that explanation. I'm also fascinated though, and again, I always misinterpret stories, so I don't know if I'm seeing something here that's again not there like I was, but there's something really compelling about a powerful AI that not only does what it wants but rewrites history.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
Like that remakes reality is so powerful that it convinces people that things are true that aren't true. Just at a granular level, I think is really, really fascinating, because I've never really heard of AI stories getting too deep into that, right? It's usually about like brute force, or Skynet figures out humans are an inefficiency. Goodbye, right?
Yeah.
It's never like
nuke them, right?
Right.
Yeah.
It's never like this 4D kind of, I'm actually going to trick the fuck out of all of you. And that gets more into like the simulation theory and shit, right? Like the Matrix and stuff like that. So I just thought maybe that's another interesting subtext to the story that I thought was fun, because the dialogue is interesting, I guess. Some of the voice acting is really weak. Like Adam's English voice actor, in my opinion, is bad.
Yeah.
He's crazy. Like tonally, he's like up and down the wall. Sometimes he'll be really serious, and other times he'll be like, "Whoa, hey, Eve," he's like, what the fuck are you, dude? Like,
How are the Korean voices?
They're exactly the same. So I appreciate everyone who listens to Korean dub and they're like, oh, the Korean dub is so much better, and I get that. But as somebody who does kind of understand Korean, the voice direction was the same. Like Adam's voice would go up and down from cheerful to like morose and somber, and like it was just all over the place. And the dialogue was written the same way. If the dialogue felt stilted, it's the same way in Korean. And the fact, and I understand a very elementary level of Korean, and the fact that I understood most of this game speaks to the level of writing that's in Stellar Blade. Yeah.
It's like simple English Wikipedia.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the dialogue is Eve. You have to go here. You have to go there. And what is this? Or who is this? Or what is going on here? A lot of the dialogue is just that, right?
Yeah.
So it's very, very easy to understand, even in Korean, for me.
Could have used some of that Sony polish there, some of that influence.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
What did you guys make of the sexuality in the game? Like just Eve being what she is, and some of the other characters too. I'm just curious how you felt like it read, if you felt like it was gratuitous or over the top. Because Michael watched me play much of it, and we were talking about it as I was playing, and I'm like, I don't really feel like
titillated.
Yeah, like it's not. And that's good. I mean, that's not what I'm really looking for in my video games. But I'm like, I feel like she's kind of just like a normal character. Like it's almost overdone how she's so fucking hot. She's so sexy. Yeah, she is hot. I mean, of course she is. But like, it's not like you're not even looking at her. You're playing a third person game. You're looking all around her. You know, like you don't really see her. There are some.
I was looking.
Oh, well, I'm sure you were, because you're a perv.
Yeah,
I did want to go into the teddy bear outfit at some point, and I felt like that would have been totally immersion breaking. I will say there are some really dope animations though that I think she looks really awesome in. I love the animation when you approach a ladder from behind and she swings in front of it.
Oh, that's
and
cool.
A lot of games don't do that. Like that's a really nice touch. A lot of games will just
I love
either collide with the ladder and have you go up it, or
because you're on the wrong side of the ladder. That's right.
So she swings around. It's like there's like really dope where it's like, yeah, that's like a sexy little like touch or whatever, you know.
Yeah, it's a good quality of life thing too.
Yeah,
but yeah.
But generally speaking, I was like, I mean, you see her in menus and stuff, and I'm looking all over the screen. You're almost not even really in my opinion, paying attention to her. And then you see her again, and you're like, oh yeah, she's pretty. But they do a nice job because it's not quite anime, but she's not human. It's not sexy in a human way.
No,
women don't look like that. And I'm not saying from the big tits and all that. Like, I'm not saying that at all. It's like women just don't look like this. So it's like, I understand that the design is overtly in that direction, but I actually think the game does a nice job of kind of just meshing it with the world. It just makes sense for some reason. Yeah.
My friend Pat said that it's you can kind of apply the old furry artist meme to Stellar Blade, where it looks like Stellar Blade's women were designed by in the same way Sweat would be designed by someone who's only drawn cum before. Like I don't know how to draw Sweat, but I know how to draw cum, so this is what it looks like.
Right.
Yeah.
That's
Jesus.
That's well said.
You didn't change the outfit though, did you?
Yeah, did you change outfits? Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I never even bought. I mean, I got a bunch of them and looked at them, but I was like, I don't know. Again, I didn't want it to be immersion breaking. It's like I don't want her running around in a fucking French maid outfit. It's just like, or whatever, or like little dress. It's like all right, we'll try to keep it as. It's like Bubblegum Crisis or something. It's like we'll try to keep it as like spandexy as we can, and that's just how she rolls. So the other costumes are cool, but I don't know. Yeah, maybe it'll get a little hotter if you. Yeah. I'm sorry, Dustin. Go ahead.
Well, not even. I mean, I agree. Some of them felt too immersion breaking, and also I just felt like if I would use this outfit, I feel gross because it feels like too revealing. Like we mentioned, the outfit you get from getting all the fish is a maid swimsuit, and that's probably the most revealing outfit you get. Other than the skins, it's revealing in a different way.
What would little Chris Colin, Dustin Furman think about that?
Probably would be into it, I would assume.
Yeah.
Anytime. Maybe not. I don't know.
You. I mean, I'm saying about you doing that.
Oh, about me doing that. I don't know.
Yeah,
that's a good question. I don't want to miss.
We don't know Chris Colin, Dustin Furman yet, so we don't
know him.
We can't know anything more about him. But I was curious what he would think about his own father perving out to South Korean ladies.
Yeah. If he's in the house where there's figures everywhere, it'd probably just be business as usual.
Yeah, so that's true.
That's nothing much. This is just how men are, you know.
Yeah.
I did find it interesting that her being hot only comes up at a few points in the game. In fact, I think there's one when you first get your haircut. She'll ask Adam what he thinks, and he's like, I don't know. Like it's really bad the way that scene is written out.
God, dude.
The other one is when you get that sexy maid costume from the fisherman guy. And he's kind of like, how dare you? And he's like, oh, you'll come back. Or something. I can't remember what he said. But he says something real weird. You're like, oh, this was a kind of a normal relationship. And now you're giving me this weird maid outfit. Okay.
I don't remember that. That's really funny, though.
But yeah, other than that, it's never really... Her sexiness is not acknowledged. And maybe that is because, like you mentioned, Gene, that her race is created to be these, like these people have seen angels before. They know what they're like, but it's not really anything that comes up. And in fact, I would say overall, and I don't think it's necessarily negative, Eve is just kind of a boring character, if you ask me. She doesn't, and I know that's by design in some way, that she's not as human-like, but she doesn't really have much going on in terms of, like, there's certain things that she cares about. You can see she cares about saving the people of Zion or whatever, but I never felt really connected with, I guess, or any of the characters. I felt more connected with the story and the plot overall, but yeah, they never really talk about, they're like, hey, why are your tits hanging out? Nope.
Yeah, I think well, I feel like everyone's all like that. You said the angels are all hot, so it's just business. That's what people expect, kind of thing. And I think Dustin is hard to connect with characters just because the writing's not good. So it's even harder to connect to any of them. Like Adam going, Eve, it's just like I don't give a fuck about
so
you at
weird.
all.
Yeah,
and like Lily been like, Eve, help, or some shit. It's like, all right, here's some plot at the end for her, I guess.
While we bring up Lily, Gene, you and I had this conversation off camera, but I think it's time that we got to acknowledge it. Lily, she's lowly coded, and I didn't like it. Okay. Gene and I both agreed as soon as we unlocked another outfit for her, switch it off. We switch it to her wearing a fucking coat because she's something.
Put a fucking raincoat on that girl. I swear to God, please.
It is weird. It's one of the, Mike and I were bringing it up because we always joke about that in games where I've said it before, where it's like, how old is she? And I'm like, oh, she's seven. She's an ancient being. She's 7,000 years old. Yeah. We were talking about this in Grand Blue Fantasy Relink when I was playing that earlier in the year, where it's like this girl is like 12 years old, but it's like, she's born 2,000 years ago or whatever. And I'm like, this is so strange. Like, why are you doing this? It's funny. I was a little fixated on the fact that they gave her like boob jiggle physics.
Yeah, exactly.
That was a very upsetting. Yeah,
but I didn't even think to give her a new outfit. I didn't change any of the characters' outfits, so I know I was unlocking them, but so I didn't even think of covering her up. But that's interesting. Okay, so that's good insight.
Yeah. I did play with some of the other outfits because I wanted to see like the maid outfit or like the short skirts and everything like that. And I wanted to see how that would affect the sexiness of the game. Because I was exactly like Colin. I wasn't really being affected by this, but I don't really get turned on by video games. I think I said before on the server, like I think my Shiranai King of Fighters 95, the debut of the bouncy boobs, that was the one that knocked me on my ass. But I was like 14 years old, and since then I just don't get turned on by video games. We had that Sacred writer who talked about, you might
waiting for. Not wanting Eve to fall in love in case
right, right.
You can isekai and she'd be real.
Because you might get isekai into the yeah, there was a writer who said, am I weird for wanting Eve to be single, or certain characters in fiction to be single at the very, very, very 0, like never chance that you get isekai into this fantasy world, and then you might have a chance with them.
What?
So I tried to get into that mental state where whether it was like, would I want to fuck Eve, or at the very least, at a primal level, right? Would I want to just suddenly want to start having sex with Eve? I will say that once I put on the short skirts, it was starting to work on me. Yeah, because her ass is hanging out. I'm sorry, and it felt like. The funny thing though is that I really wanted the outfits that covered her up, because I really wanted like to put her in jeans and like a blouse or whatever with a necktie to make her look really cute and professional. I never found any of those outfits. The only fucking outfits I found were the shortest skirts, all the ones with her ass hanging out, and I swear to God, every single outfit I found just made her ass bigger and bigger and bigger, and I was just like, oh my God. But yeah, the short skirt ones where it's just like a thong out or whatever, like that did work on me because it was a little bit more titillating, it's nice to see a girl in a short skirt. It's nice to see cleavage. There's a reason why bikinis and stuff like that exist, because the suggestion of nudity can be
why the human race exists.
Can be exciting.
It's the just the male gaze, the attraction.
Yeah, certainly.
It's just a primal need, primal desire, So it worked. She was very bouncy and fleshy, and she did look like kind of like a sex doll, like a sex toy. So that's kind of where I got out of it. But it still didn't you can ignore all that, as Colin did, right? Or you can try to find just look it up at PowerPix and just find the outfit with jeans and just throw it out there.
Yeah, dude, I messed around with outfits constantly, and the hair. I was changing that shit all the time. I think that's like a big part of the game, is like the dress up aspect of it. Because I feel like they put so much effort into how many outfits there are and how many different hairstyles there are and the colors.
They're beautiful.
There's a lot of customization you could do to the game. That was like a huge part of the game, I feel like, is like so many of the rewards are like, here's an outfit, here's something else like that, some cosmetic, here's some earrings and stuff. Like all that shit was cool. I liked doing all that stuff. That was awesome.
The detail on these outfits were great too. Did you get the yellow Kill Bill sport?
Yeah,
outfit?
That one was sick.
That one's cool.
It has a little buckle hanging off her sleeve, like just hanging off. It's just like really cool design. So like I liked wearing some of the stuff,
Yeah, I thought a lot of the designs were really cool.
Yeah.
So I was always experimenting with all of them.
What was your favorite outfit?
My favorite outfit? I was going to ask everyone that too. My favorite one was like the racer one.
That was mine.
I wore
most
it?
of the game.
Sick.
I wore most of the game. Yep.
That
Red
one was
Passion
sick.
was mine. The red blouse and the leather pants.
Red Passion.
Yeah. I was trying to think
It was a little hidden. It's actually hidden in the first level.
Oh, this one.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's my Devil May Cry outfit, basically. So.
Yeah, that was definitely my favorite. Which hairstyle did you guys use? And did you make the hair shorter?
Long. I kept it long.
I kept it. I made it shorter, just because the hair was.
Short too.
I feel like when it was long, it was just like clipping all the time and kind of awkward. So I was like, let's cut that down a little bit. But it was a cool feature. Colin, it's really funny. We were talking about fishing earlier. There is a setting I saw when I was like nearly done catching every fish. It's like you can automate a lot of it so easily. Like, you remember the parts where you have to hold the triggers down and like keep it in that area? You don't have to do that. You can just click it once and it just does it. And it just does it for you.
For all of it.
Oh, really? Okay,
like,
that's good to know.
Okay,
I was like, holy shit.
I totally didn't even explore the options. Okay.
Yeah, that's good to know.
It makes fishing so easy.
Right.
So if you just want to get it out of the way, you could totally do all that.
I would say the Blue Monsoon is a very compelling outfit. I'm looking at some of the pictures on Eurogamer here.
Blue Monsoon.
It's just her in like a blue bathing suit.
Oh, yeah.
This is like the most revealing outfit, or one of the most revealing outfits of the game.
Gosh,
maybe the most revealing.
Yeah, this was the one that everyone used to counter the gooning allegations or whatever. The censorship allegations. Like, just look at this outfit. Come on,
I didn't mess with her hair or her earrings or anything though. I did go into the sliders, but I just liked her the way she was. Like,
yeah, she was.
I felt like every addition
look.
or whatever or change I made was worse. So I just left it the way it was.
Man, I did a lot.
I did stick with the default outfit for most of the game. I like the default outfit. I like the little angel wings that come out, and that's why I kept the hair long, because I feel like that the hair is supposed to be split right into the middle of her body, where the angels are like right there. So, and it's supposed to be like it's just like part of the center of gravity. Her hair, So, I don't know.
Yeah, I would say the long hair with that outfit. Yeah, totally intended for all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
We were talking about kind of the endings earlier. I'm curious about which endings you guys got primarily on your first playthrough.
I knew that there were multiple endings, but I wasn't really aware about how to get them. I knew it's something revolved around that meter in the corner because they kept showing it to you. So I did max that out. So I took Adam's hand thinking that it was going to be a bad ending. Because I was like, I'll save the like good guy ending for my next playthrough when I'm strong and I fight them all and I like kind of earn it. And then I unintentionally, I guess, got the real like the like the ending that is
the true ending.
Yeah, the true ending. So
Let me ask you a question, Colin, because the same thing happened to me, where I kind of got the impression from that conversation that taking his hand was not necessarily the good route.
Yeah,
so I also did that, but then that's supposed to be the true ending if you have the lily bar filled. That's like, oh no, that's the good thing is to merge. But they made it sound
join
kind of
with
bad.
men. You need men. You need a man sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. It's yeah. I read it the same way. I don't know if others did too. Did you guys read it the same way, or did you
Same way?
Of like the bad ending?
I thought I was doing
I thought I was doing the wrong thing.
Yeah, me too.
I didn't really feel like that because a lot of the game, like if you read a lot of the notes, obviously you find out that Mother Sphere and it's all pretty much a lie.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't feel like it was necessarily the bad ending. I was just confused on what it was going to be because Adam, I guess what he's saying kind of made sense, but they didn't do a good job of it just with Adam. I feel like in general, his whole story, like
no, he just comes out of nowhere.
He just comes out of nowhere. He's like, "Hey, Eve, I got these angel wing, and I'm Raphael. Actually,
angel.
I actually made."
He goes from like Resident Evil side character to Sephiroth,
Yeah.
like out of nowhere, like what the fuck?
It was like Lord. It was classic Resident Evil lore dump right at like the final 2 rooms and shit.
Yeah,
of just like everything like that.
Well, perhaps a relevant note is that it is the most common ending people are getting. 22% of people who played Stellar Blade got that Making New Memories ending, which is the one we all seem to have gotten, taking Adam's hand but having Lily's bar full. Doing the other thing with a full bar, I guess, is Return to the Colony, and that's 15.5%. And then the ending where you don't have Lily's bar full is 6.5%.
I did not have Lily's bar full.
Okay, so
you didn't do like a lot of side content.
Yeah, so I did get the bad ending with on the good path, but I got the bad ending. So
Gotcha.
Lily totally just died in my like she fried in that fucking mech suit. It was crazy.
Yeah.
That's awesome, dude.
Yeah, and then Eve would just fucking like just cut up that mech suit like with Lily's body in it.
Damn,
it was crazy.
That is
The game was pretty violent. I thought it was
Yeah.
cool. I thought it was cool. I have no problem with that, but I it was more violent than I thought it was going to be. It's almost violent, like a survival horror game is violent.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, Colin, part of the thing about that ending with taking Adam's hand that felt bad is that he says something like, yeah, it's going to be tough in the short term, but this is going to be the way. I'm like, oh shit, are we about to genocide everybody here? And we are going to be the new Adam and Eve and start this new race by eliminating everybody else.
That's cooler than what happened. Yeah.
I thought that was going to happen. And then it's like, oh no, we're going and giving power to everybody at Zion, and Eve's going to stand above like she's fucking Batman looking over Gotham at the end. Like
that's what I thought. I was like, oh, this is the Order 1886 all over again. Just standing in there, back there. We'll probably get a sequel though this time.
I wonder how they're going to do that.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you guys about the quote unquote survival horror parts in the game. Those 2 sections. I liked when they did it the first time where you can't use your sword and all that stuff. But then when they did the second time, I was just like, didn't really know that, especially because it's like the same boss kind of at the end.
It was.
I liked what they're going, but I think they shouldn't have gone back to it. It would have been cool if it felt like it was just that one little moment.
Padding, probably.
I think so too. Yeah,
they might have both come from padding. I mean, for all we know, but
maybe
like you could have imagined that in designing, they would have had a different way to get that story out, and they realized that it was, they're gonna have these 2 open world areas, a couple of cities, Zion, and something like that. So I could be wrong, but I always look at shit like that in games, and I'm like,
no, I'm sure
I liked
there is
it actually, but it's so different that I feel like that couldn't have been the concept, right? Like in the beginning, you know what? It felt like Horizon. I mean, in that regard, it feels just like Horizon, like where Horizon would just go into these bases, out of nowhere.
Oh,
and and you would like go through and do like, you would almost be linearly locked in to this one area until you finished it. It felt
yeah. Like Horizon's like jumping puzzles and everything too. Yeah.
Right, exactly. And like, like when I don't want to spoil Horizon, but when you're like solving the mystery.
Yeah.
Of the game.
The vaults or whatever that they had. Yeah.
So I felt a lot of that there too.
Let's talk about the combat some more, I guess, because I am interested what you guys think. I think the combat is really good, honestly. It is weird, this game, people trying to put it in a box of what it is, Souls-like or action game, and it's clearly both put together. They're just taking elements from both of them. The parries, the backflips, all that kind of stuff is Souls-like. The health, up on the D-pad and all that shit. But the combos you're doing in combat and all that kind of stuff, like holding buttons down, timing, and I actually liked the abilities like on the L1, R1, and how you would get them. Like the beta ones, you would just do damage and block. But the other one you had to do with the perfect dodges, like encouraging you to dodge. I really liked, because I was worried about that early on in the game, because it didn't feel like, it felt way more efficient just to block everything and parry it, because especially because enemies have that bar you bring down.
Mhm.
So I was like, what's the point of dodging unless it's just like a panic thing? But thankfully that they added a mechanic into that, which I was very happy about. And of course, the double trigger. You got to have that in any action game with the Taki trigger. I thought it was pretty fun.
Time.
Not as powerful as I wanted it to feel. I felt like it didn't do a lot of damage, but it was good at like keeping guys stunned down. But really good start foundation for the game. I really hope to see, like, I think they need to tweak the guns and all that kind of stuff. But Colin, I think people are like saying Souls games for you. This reminded me of Sekiro more than the other games, definitely just because of the parry timing. Now, I'm not saying to hop into Sekiro or anything like that, because it is a harder game than this, but you get a little bit of flavor in it. So I think you can do those games.
Yeah, I found myself dodging more than blocking, even though it didn't get me anything really, because I just felt like I had the timing better. And then when they did introduce those moves, I thought that the combat was heightened as well. I was so reliant on so the beta move would be like L1 square, and then
the thrust one.
Right, that was huge. And then R1 triangle, which used a lot of energy, but if you used it, it would heal you, which would be which is good. So there's not very many things in the game that will heal you unless you're using certain like exosuits or whatever, spines or whatever the fuck they're called. So I really liked the combat. It felt, again, it feels like Ninja Gaiden to me. It doesn't feel, maybe it's been a long time since I played those games and I'm just not remembering them right.
It does feel like Ninja Gaiden, you're right.
And because it's just fast. Like, I guess I'm just very rigid in my own look at when people say Soulsborne, it's like, all right, so it's this and it's this and it's this. And it's like, without the consequence and without the heaviness and without the constant danger, you're missing a lot of the kind of things that I think would identify with that in my own mind. Like, I thought Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order was harder than this game for sure. You know,
interesting.
And more and more annoying to play, I think too. Like, I think this game's better than that, but I felt like there was enough going on in combat, and you kind of learn how to raise your beta energy and manage these different enemies. There's not a huge amount of different kinds of enemies, and some of them behave a similar way, so you get to know how to deal with them.
I hate the fucking turret guys.
Oh my god, yeah, those guys.
Because
you can't sneak up on them.
You can't sneak up on them. Yeah. I'm still sneaking up on them to this day. I know that you can't sneak up on them, but I'm still trying. You know,
right? It's when you see them, I just try to avoid them because there's no. You know, stab. She basically gets down, like, stabs swords up people's butts, and it's quite satisfying. So I do like to do that, but yeah, I can never sneak up on those guys. But yeah, the combat is enjoyable. I think the gun play is fine, but really seldom used. I think I really only use the gun when you have to, like when you have to knock things down around a boss, so they don't use their super attack, or the turret. You encounter a turret at one point if you do a certain side quest where you have to attack it with guns, and so on and so forth. So yeah, I thought it was very manageable. It's pretty hard, but I think Dustin was right last week on Sacred when he said the game actually gets easier, and because you're just given more ways to get around things, and you're just given more opportunities to heal, more beta energy, use more beta energy, get different equipment that will allow you to augment your character. How did you guys choose to augment? Like, I used the augments that opened the window wider for blocking and dodging, which was huge for me. And then I used the other one when you got a second one, was lowering damage dealt and giving me more shields. Those almost seemed like the so obvious ones. I think the only other one I would have even considered was the more beta energy one as well. But otherwise, it seemed like there was pretty obvious equipment to use, although I imagine people have different combinations of things that they would prefer. Sure.
I do feel like, though, especially for reverse playthrough, they seem too obvious on which ones to go for. I wish they kind of had like more, not things that seem so obvious for the exo things. I wish they had more fleshed out, where it felt more like a class where you're picking a certain thing, but it's like, I don't want more gun stuff because I barely use it. I barely have the need to use it. So they need to work on that a little more.
Yeah, the upgrade tree, it's just classic. It's classic where I'm just like, I don't care. You get to a certain point where you upgrade everything that you want to use and that you need, and then you're like, I really don't even give a shit anymore. And you just start using your points. At least that's what I encountered. The last half of the game, probably, I'm like, I really don't even care. I don't, because none of this is doing anything for me, you know?
Right. Well,
so,
it's surprising, Colin, hearing you and I played this game very similar, because you mentioned the beta energy, like L1 square, that attack. Eventually, because I used one of the exos that gives you, like, I think it makes your beta energy more powerful. And it kind of almost at the end felt like I was starting to get a little cheesy with it, because you really can boost your beta attack power. And then it does that specific attack, at least I found, did so much more damage than the other beta attacks that I never used the other ones.
It was too good.
I only used them on accident, or by accident, because
right.
I'd be holding L1 often and using it, and then hitting a face button and not intending to do it, and that would often be like the slash move or whatever. So, because I guess that would be circle, right? And I might have been dodging or something. I don't know exactly how that would have worked, but
the shield one was really good too. The X one, gets rid of their shield, is super good.
So the cheesiest one actually is the R1 and circle one, because it will knock down the entire boss face down every single time, and it's very cheap. So all you have to do is just spam R1 and circle over and over again. That's how I beat the last boss. It's just knock that mech on its face and just keep hitting it, and then recharge your beta. And then knock it down again, and they never get up. That's real cheap, actually. Like, it probably should have been patched out or something, But it really is. You're just ground pounding the last boss. Once I figured it out,
The consumables were interesting in the game because they were so good. Like, I forgot about them a lot of time to use them, but if you really experiment with those consumables, like the grenades,
they were good.
Knock people over. Like, you could use those on all the bosses and knock them all down. Like that other ability. It's like,
that's true.
I think those helped make the game a lot easiser for a lot of people, because you got extra heal. There's like 2 or 3 extra heals on there too.
Big heals, yeah.
So
there's like a space. There's like a area of effect heal, like a gradual.
There's like heal over time,
and then there's like a lesser health pack, and then. And I had so many of them, because you were just finding them and then storing them.
And you got your normal heal too. It's like crazy how much.
I think all these, and then there's story mode, and then there's also story mode with the QTE action assist, right? Where every single time you want to dodge or parry, a little QTE button will pop up. I think this is Shuhei Yoshida's doing, because Kim Hyung-tae told me that he thought that a lot of the game was a little bit unreasonably hard. So. And remember,
Shuhei thought that, really?
Shuhei thought that the game was hard. And remember, Shuhei was the guy who thought that Demon Souls was trash.
I know. I was going to say, well,
so he clearly like is understanding these games a little bit more, but he still thinks that they're pretty hard. So I think Kim Hyung-tae said, we definitely made the game easier, like based on that.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, Shuhei's in the thank yous too, which is cool. Which is,
he was the guy who brought this whole game together. He just happened to be in Korea, and then they reached out to him.
Yeah, it's a great. He got a great pick with this one. Didn't mess this one up. Let's talk about some of the side quests in the game. What did you guys think of them? I thought most of them were pretty boring. Like especially the board ones. You get on the board. The vast majority of them were like, go find this person and they're dead.
Podcast side quests.
And that's
every person you have to go find is dead. Even at the beginning, they're like, go find this cat. Cat's dead. And then there's the girl that runs the junk shop, and they talk about her sister. I'm like, well, she's going to be dead. Sure enough, she's dead.
Yep.
Every person you have to go find. I think there's maybe one instance that they're like alive in a crate or something like that.
There was that one guy in the container or whatever.
Yeah.
In the shipping container, the freighter container. Even the guy that you have to go find that was alive earlier in the game, when you find him, he's dead.
Yeah, they definitely went back to that way too many times, so it became very predictable.
Every single flavor text or whatever too was always like, "Oh, I'm dying. When will Mother Sphere save us? I'm dead now."
Yeah, I'm either Mother Sphere betrayed us, or
it's like if BioShock was all about like, oh my god, Rapture is being destroyed. Like every single audio log was about Rapture being destroyed. That's pretty much like what this game is. But
I did like the girl that sings the song. in the bar.
Was that the legs?
Yeah.
Yeah, that has no legs. I like the part where you have to go and find out who she was.
In the opera house?
Go to the opera house.
Yes.
That was pretty cool.
That was cool.
That felt like good, like world building, a look into the past that we hadn't had from some of the other stuff, like a more, I guess, even though it's not human, but human experience, not just like futuristic room underground.
That's probably one of the best quests in the game, I would say, right? Like her whole thing with Sue, that guy that like walks, protects her or whatever. I can't think of many other side quests that really stuck out into my mind.
I think that's
like all the main characters kind of all get like their own quest line, like that little robot. What was his name? Digger, I think he was.
Digger.
Like there's some characters. I think that's a better approach than just like a bunch of random board ones. The board ones are fine, but there's a lot. I mean, the idea is fine, but there was just too many. And I think side quests always work better if they connect, if they're attached to a specific character and you have multiple parts. Like Ghost of Tsushima, they have like those side quests like with the characters specifically that are way more interesting. But for the most part, they're kind of throwaway because I did all of them. I did every side quest in the game, and most of them were pretty whatever. Some of them were cool because they took you to like optional areas. Like there's the one in the desert wastelands where you're like sliding down those tubes or whatever throughout the place. And there's some optional bosses, I think, like that. But other than that, pretty forgettable. But I don't think I'm happy they're there, I guess. So it's extra content if you want. That is classic padding right there for you, Colin.
Yeah,
those board quests.
That's what I was gonna say. Is the board requests did feel like padding. I just feel like it's not going to be a popular opinion because the game is already pretty brief, but by modern standards. But it's like I wish they had the courage to just say, like, we don't need this.
Yeah, I agree.
It's the way I feel about just. It's the way I even feel like they have even the existence, not the QT assists, but the QTs and the cutscenes when you're fighting bosses. Like, you don't need those.
That's a Sony thing, man.
You don't need it.
That's a Sony thing.
It is. I mean, they pioneered it, of course, but it's But it's like, just have the courage to. It's like I always say, when there's a game without a last boss, like when an Uncharted game doesn't need a last boss. It has last bosses sometimes, but it doesn't need one. Have the courage to just say, we don't do that. We don't need it. And I would have loved to have seen them just waste a little bit less time with trivial distractions. Although, again, you don't have to go down those routes. Right. So I'd understand that. Because I do love another game this reminds me of is Borderlands, just in its presentation and the kind of its vibe. Even some of the musical like stings, sound like Borderlands in my opinion. And I loved that. Borderlands, especially the first one, always reminded me of like a game where it's like, it doesn't need to be any more than what it is. It's nothing more than what it is. It's fucking dope and it's fun, but we don't get locked up in any sort of nonsense. It's just, and as the further the series went, the more it did become more enmeshed in the conventions of the time by giving you more options and kind of getting weighted down to the point where we used to make fun of Chris and I at Borderlands 3. When you would pause it, it would take like a few seconds. Because the menu is so fucked, with like things and updates and all. So it's just an example of a game that like is already reserved, is already so brief, is putting its value its value and the context of value for the audience in its gameplay and the experiential, play of the 20 hours that you're going to get out of it. I just feel like you could have cut some of that stuff and even made the game better. So it's a small complaint. I mean, the biggest complaint I have about the game, and I'd be curious to know what you guys think of this, is just the inconsistent presentation in terms of, and Dustin and I were lamenting this. It's like, why do some places have maps? Why don't other places have maps? Why do you give me things to collect, but no way to track them? You give me this vague trophy count of like, the cans are the only things you can really see which ones you specifically have. If you need one of those save points, you are shit out of luck, dude. You got to go figure out which one you need. There's no indication really anywhere of which one you're missing. It's the same thing with like a missing. The one cool thing they do is they make it so that you don't need to find all of the collectibles for the most part. There are some exceptions to that. So you have some leeway, but I wish that they just did a better job of tracking things in game. Cause I feel like that's just again, it's always the little things, man. These are so easy to do. It's like, you need to know somewhere late in production, like you got to have people kind of wrapping all of this up into you have to assume the player doesn't know what you know about the game and doesn't care about the things you care about. I'm surprised they don't get this feedback you know, and I'm especially surprised it's not patched. I even saw Starfield patched its maps and the way it presents itself in game. And it's like, this needs that. This really does. Like Stellar Blade does need a patch with maps in places where they don't exist arbitrarily. It's like, if this place has a map, this place doesn't. This place has a map, this place doesn't. And then they need to have a way to track what you need and what you're missing for collections, the completionist sake. You know?
Yeah. Even if you don't want that, I think in the second playthrough, you should at least unlock something that helps you locate the cans or whatever. If you don't know where they are, I was really annoyed, Colin, because like you were talking about the cans, is you could only see what you had if you went to the fucking vending machine, like in that one spot. And fast traveling was my biggest complaint in this game, specifically because you'd have to go back to Zion or whatever to go to a new region. I was like, dude, this fucking sucks. Just let me do it from any phone or something like that. It's ridiculous. But Colin, I'm really curious. You were talking about earlier about Sony kind of involvement with this. I forgot exactly what you were saying, but you really wanted to revisit a certain thing about it.
Yeah, I just wanted to make note that this seems to be an unusual relationship for a second party game. There are almost no analogs to it. There was a very, very long time, we say it ad nauseum, where Sony only would get involved with games if they own the IP. And this scared a lot of people away. And it might be that they've finally learned a lesson that, you know, and they first started this, they started folding in the PS3 and PS4 and Vita era with that. Just that's when the deluge of PS3 games finally and PS4 digital games finally came. When it was like, PS loves indies and we don't want to own fucking your game anymore. And we don't want to tie you to PlayStation Network necessarily. And so they courted a lot of people that way. And I just wonder if this is either a one-off or an example of a changing tenor in the way that they might present second party games moving forward. Because this really is more like the relationship Microsoft had with Insomniac for Sunset Overdrive 10 years ago. In that it's so funny as you play games and you know the industry well enough, and I'm sure a lot of people out there did notice this. It's like, I noticed that trademark thing immediately the first time I turned the game up. Like, because it wasn't even like I'm like a nerd and I look at everything. I just know, like, it just caught my eye that the cadence of words was different.
Yeah.
And so I went and investigated it. It wasn't like much of legwork. It's like, just go look at trademarks and see who owns what. And so I just thought that was interesting. It makes me wonder if that's to allow Stellar. I wonder how, in other words, how far this goes and what this relationship means. Is it like we want to Shift Up is a mobile and PC developer primarily, right? Do they want to do shit with Stellar Blade there and want to have the right to do that? And that's kind of the idea. Is it because Sony came in so late? This game was already announced as Project Eve for multiple platforms, including Xbox and PC, neither of which is on right now. And I doubt it's ever going to come to Xbox because of the publishing arrangement. So I just wonder why that is, and if we will see more of that in the future. Because it's interesting when you think about, that's a pretty powerful position to be in. That's not even something that Sony lets Kojima do. Sony owns Death Stranding. Sony owns Fizzit, right? Like, it's strange. So I noticed that, and that's something maybe only Colin cares about. But I feel like we will see more examples like this, and that's why I think it might even be up in the air if there was a sequel to this game, who might get it. I imagine Sony baked into whatever contract they had that we have first right of refusal on a sequel, but we'll see. So I think that's just a little thing to put a pin in, and we'll maybe come to it later in the coming years.
Yeah, Colin, I wonder if part of the deal with Sony, because they clearly, this game has been in development and was in development for a long time before Sony got involved. You mentioned about how it was announced as multi-platform. You can go back and see those full gameplay trailers before Sony got involved. So I wonder if their publishing involved more to do with promotion. You know, they included it in all their state of plays stuff in the PlayStation blog. Side note, I did notice, just because I check the PlayStation store every time I get on my PlayStation, just out of curiosity, never put a big splash screen for this game on the store that I noticed. It was.
I think Dustin, I looked at it yesterday, and I think there was one.
Was there one now?
That's all dynamic, I think, too.
I know.
I don't even know.
Yeah.
You know,
now, I mean, I could check, but I have my stuff right here. But I don't know, Dustin. It seems like it should have been there right at launch, or like a few days before.
Yeah, I don't even know if I remember
Strange.
if I saw it or not. I wasn't paying attention to that. That is interesting. Like, yeah, it's just something to pay attention to about. Well, I will say this: the game wouldn't have happened without Sony, at least in the same way. Like, if you look at the credits are long. You can't skip them, which is really annoying. But you can fast forward through them. And Sony, there are way more Sony people in those credits than there are Shift Up or even because like Virtuous worked on the game and some other contract studios as well. But Sony definitely had a massive play in this, and so which makes me assume that maybe they have the console game stuff locked down. But yeah, just something to notice. If Stellar Blade becomes more than this, I would imagine that Sony doesn't necessarily have to be involved in it, I guess is what I'm saying.
Stellar Blade is the splash screen right now.
Oh, it is?
Yeah,
Okay.
right now.
I noticed it wasn't
late,
at launch. But
Yeah.
again, Colin mentioned it is dynamic, and I have noticed that it's
okay.
sometimes different. But
Colin, this whole publishing thing I think is interesting. I guess maybe it's just like you're saying, a future to come for Sony if they're willing to just compromise on some things just to get games on their platform. Because you've talked about this before, they're just really trying to kill Xbox, it seems like. So maybe they're just willing to make some compromises to get those kind of deals done. And I'm sure they're thinking about Nintendo too in the future and all that stuff. So I don't know.
Did they do this, Sony, in the PS2 era? Because obviously the PS2 had so many console exclusives, but they weren't necessarily by Sony, right? But
right,
it reminds me. Is Sony published any? But the studios kept their trademarks, but yeah.
I mean, it's funny you brought that up because I there is some PS2 era connection there, but I even think early PS3 era. I was thinking about games like Haze and
exactly
Lair. Yeah. And stuff like that.
Lair. Oh god.
But then there are games like
I like Lair a lot.
Then there's like traditional second party stuff. Like Heavenly Sword was a very traditional second party style game.
Yeah.
And so
I'm wondering if they're trying to. I'm wondering if they're trying to return to that strategy again, because it worked out well back then, you know.
Yeah.
And it's like that could help bury Xbox, right?
Yeah, it worked well in the PS2 era. In the PS3 era, it's hard to know. Like Lair killed Factor 5, right? Like it was like a disaster, and it makes you wonder why. I think some people were choosing more out of loyalty or assumption. For instance, I think you even saw that with Titanfall, where I think EA halfway through that contract, like when the game was coming out, were like, "Oh fuck," you know, like we made the wrong choice, and but you just don't know what's going to happen, And so that's why it was so inevitable that Titanfall 2 came to everything. So I'm not saying that's happening. I'm just I'm curious about that, and I think flexibility is a good thing. Like being willing to work with talented studios to get good games on PlayStation, regardless of what it might mean for long-term exploitation of a IP or whatever, is they should take things on a case-by-case basis. And I'm glad that for whatever reason they did. And we said this on Sacred, and I'll reiterate it here because everyone seems so upset all the time with things like on PlayStation and how things are going and whatever. It's like, I really feel like Sony's having a fucking killer ass year right now. I mean, The Last of Us Part 2, Helldivers 2, you even had something like Grand Blue Fantasy Relink, which I enjoyed. I played and beat. That leads into things like Rise of the Ronin and
Rebirth.
Stellar Blade and Rebirth, right? It's like, this is an incredibly strong year, and they're doing it by relying mostly on partners. Like Koei Tecmo has always been very mercenary, and Rise of the Ronin is actually another example of a game that is owned by the publisher and not and only published by Sony. But that relationship already exists because that's the same thing Koei Tecmo did with Neo. They're very happy to get in bed, and they like security. What Koei Tecmo likes is like lowering the risk and then lowering the upside. They're willing to make that trade-off every time, which is why they make whatever it's so interesting. Actually, you can just go pitch them on almost anything, and it seems like they'd be willing to take it if and that's very unusual for a third party. So maybe Sony will have more of a relationship like that while they're court games, and be more flexible about the way. And think about George Lucas with Star Wars, right? Like George Lucas made his money through merchandising Star Wars, and people want to own the IP, and I don't blame them. Why do you want to look at Jaffe putting his heart and soul into Twisted Metal and God of War? Now he has a lot to show for it, obviously, but not Twisted Metal or God of War. I mean, those go on without him. He doesn't get anything from them, and that sucks.
That does suck.
So I don't blame people for being protective of their IP, and maybe Sony should be put in a corner and told
Sure.
that they shouldn't necessarily own things like that.
Was this their first time working with a Korean developer?
Yes, it's on a AAA game. We know that they have a relationship with NCSoft and have had a relationship with NCSoft for years,
right.
although
Okay.
that hasn't borne fruit. If you go back to the PS2 era, Sony first announced, like in the transition to the PS3 era, Sony first announced that they were investing in South Korea and working with NCSoft, but nothing came of that. And really of that early MMO or like that multiplayer, like what do we do game kind of Asian flavored game, we really only got things like White Knight Chronicles out of Level 5 and a few other things that Sony published. So it wasn't like it bore fruit bared fruit anywhere else. But then just earlier this year or late last year, NCSoft announced that it's partnering with Sony again, and it's widely believed that they're making Horizon an MMO.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so
Interesting.
I wonder, Colin, you were mentioning earlier about some of the just the faff in Stellar Blade, that the game could have been just shorter, right?
Mhm.
And just a leaner experience. Maybe that second Resident Evil experience didn't need to be there. All the bulletin board quests didn't need to be there. I wonder if how much of that was because Sony got involved and says, "Okay, we're upgrading this to a AAA game." You know.
Yeah, I think that's
a
probably
smaller,
a good
leaner
part.
experience, probably 8 hour combat experience. Because when you look at the early trailers, they only show the parts at the end of the game. None of the stuff at the beginning with the cities and the platforming and all this stuff, all of that stuff wasn't there. So I feel like it does feel like some of these elements that aren't as strong, they do feel kind of tacked onto this game, like they were just kind of like jerry rigged into it, because the combat is so strong in this game. The combat must have been the foundation of this game. The first thing that they designed. Everything around the game design feels like it's just tacked on, and it doesn't really feel like it's in service of the whole game. You know, the puzzles and the platforming and the Resident Evil sequences and the bulletin board missions that we all know were just bullshit anyways, right? But it's just,
I was happy. I liked the platform. I was happy in the game. It's not like the best platforming, but I think it's important to break up the pace.
I liked it. It was cool. Yeah.
Sprinting through hallways and stuff constantly.
She has a great double jump too. So
yeah, so I thought that stuff was all really fun, and I liked a lot of the little puzzles. I didn't like the math one because I didn't know what the fuck I was doing. I was like, what the fuck is this? But I was happy. I think it's important to have stuff like to break up the action. But yes, Gene, the combat definitely was the main focus of the game. It's the most important part, and thankfully they really nailed that.
Gene, and that's why I feel like the last part of the game is so strong, and it's like I think that's I think that's where they started with the game, and then the beginning part, which so much of it feels like filler. I feel like that was added on to kind of escalate the game, elevate the game to a Sony level first party or second party studio game, and they can charge $70 for it.
Yeah, I feel like when you do New Game Plus, and Colin, I think you're the one, you'll be, since you're getting the platinum, you're able, if you play on normal for New Game Plus, which it's not really designed to do, it's so easy, so you can blitz through it in like 2 sittings. You can really see the core like components and building blocks of the game. It's like, okay, linear section, and then the open world stuff, you can just run from point A to point B, where you go in and do the Resident Evil parts, and you can really get the foundation of like, okay, here's block A, block B, block C, and that's where you can kind of see like, okay, well, in some ways, if you really look at it, it definitely has kind of, I don't want to say jerry-rigged together because that makes it sound really lazy, but you can see where that padding, you know, that Gene's mentioning here is like, maybe Sony came in and was like, okay, well, here we can add this open world section. It's technically completely optional, but the way that they fit it in, it with the first playthrough, it doesn't feel that way. But you really can just run through it.
Yeah, you can.
Yeah, you can ignore the whole world.
I feel like you miss a big part of the game if you do that. And a lot, especially your first playthrough, you miss a lot of power-ups. But yeah, it's like you technically can do that. It's like with Zelda, you know? You could technically run to Hyrule Castle, immediately beat the game, but you just miss out on a fuck ton of the content. Gene, you wanted to talk a little more about the open world design. You brought this up earlier. How did you feel about the open worlds? They were both kind of like deserty, I guess. The first one was like more canyon-like, way more canyon. The second one was very like sand dunes, which totally reminded me of Nier Automata.
Totally.
What do you think about all that stuff?
I actually like the second area a lot more. I
Me too.
I like the city area. There was a whole city area with quicksand that's just totally explorable. I think just the depth of the second area is like level design and exploration and the amount of like hidden things was interesting. The first open area I didn't really like as much because a lot of it felt like it's kind of like scattered puzzles, like roll a ball into this thing, you know.
I don't think getting from point A to point B is as easy in that section, especially because she cannot fall very far and it's very inconsistent. Like I found spots I would drop 10 feet down and the game would just not let me go that way. It was like seemed like an invisible wall kind of thing, almost like that. I think if they made it feel
more annoying barriers like that in the game.
Yeah, I think if they just made it feel like more open, like Zelda, you know, if you figure out how to get over there.
Yeah, it's like, why can't I do this? Like, it doesn't even make any sense. Like, why wouldn't I be able to jump through this or go
exactly?
through
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense. So that's why it just didn't feel that side. Which is funny because the game is actually pretty lenient in terms of how you solve certain puzzles. Even in the beginning area, there is a wall jumping section, right? And you would really need a double jump to be able to complete that. But if you're really, really crazy and insane, you can actually do the regular jump and dash and make it across that way. So the game is actually fairly lenient in terms of how you do things. But then there are other areas where it's like, why can't I go through here? Why can't I jump through here? It doesn't make any sense, you know? So that's why, and I feel like that happened a lot more in the first area. I feel like the second area was just more intentionally designed. There's a lot more story there. There was the cool pipelines with the surf sword, the sword surfing that you can do. Really, it was really interesting, and it was cool to see just like the enemies just litter across the battlefield, you know,
walking around.
I was like, oh, this kind of feels like Final Fantasy 13 all of a sudden again, you know. And that was kind of the vibe.
The last quarter, Final Fantasy 13.
Exactly, yeah. Well, Grand Pulse, right? But I mean, that's why when I was playing Stellar Blade, it kind of felt like I was playing like a Final Fantasy 13 action game, you know. Lightning Sword kind of reminded me of her. She kind of reminded me of Lightning. You know, she's kind of attacking the same way Lightning would. The music obviously was great. You know, imagine a Final Fantasy game with a soundtrack like Nier Automata, right, by the Okabe studio. That'd be interesting.
Yeah,
but I really started to really fall in love with the game once I started to just kind of vibe in open world, and I was like, yeah, this is a really, really good entry in the pretty girl surviving a wasteland series of fiction. You know, the genre of fiction.
One thing I was kind of hoping that was going to come in the game, but it never did, and I understand why, is I was really hoping you'd get a new weapon. Like, I liked the sword. I thought it was really fun, but for an action game, I was like, I need like at least one more. You know, they're taking inspiration from Bayonetta, Devil May Cry, God of War probably too, all that stuff, and you get multiple weapons in those games. And Eve has a lot in her toolkit, obviously, that you can do. I was like, just one more. One more would have been sweet, but maybe they're saving that for a sequel or something. I don't know.
It'd be cool to have her little hair tie that becomes a sword turn into other types of weapons. You know, you can just get rid of the drone altogether and just have that a gun too. You know, just make it.
That might be a better idea.
Yeah, just make it super cool.
On that,
you know, the drone was mostly unnecessary. You know, it was just hanging around. You know,
well, it was just a way to relay like.
Sure, communication, but like you can just talk to her. Solid Snake already had nanomachines in the bones of his ear. So
that's true. That's totally true. You're absolutely
right. So we can write around that, no problem. And
but you said something important, Gene, about the sword that becomes the hair clip or whatever. It's like, I just want to shout out the game's design. Like, I just think
that's cool.
It's really cool. There's a lot of really cool design, aesthetic choices and flair, and even really cool shots, like when she takes out the gun and the camera pans down the gun or whatever, and it looks really long.
The rail gun. But even the way she pulls her trigger with the drone, she closes her hand like this, so it goes bah, 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 bah. So like just little details like that. Make her look super fucking cool. Actually, you know?
The animation's beautiful in the game. It's
they are great,
and it does. I talked about this the first time I played it, so a few episodes of Sacred ago, where I just said it seems like because the animations are so beautiful and because the game is relying on these animations, that there is a level of latency in the combat. Like there's the game doesn't feel as responsive, but you just learn to work around that in my mind. Because it's almost like a fighting game where you're committed to the move and you can't cancel out. You kind of have to wait for her to execute her moves, and it's not like a old Ninja Gaiden game in the sense where it's like bah, 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 bah. Like it's like every animation's gonna happen. She's gonna do it. And I think it comes off a little Yeah, I don't know. Did you guys feel that way about it, or am I crazy that there was like a little bit of delay, with the attacks?
There's a little bit of delay, not as much as there used to be. They fixed a lot of that for the full release, at least. But yeah, a lot of it is animation priority. Obviously, like when she's fucking flipping upside down, swinging around, you can't block. So I'm fine, but I'm so used to games like that nowadays. It's just business as usual. Of course, any From Software game, even like Devil May Cry games, you got to commit to animations a lot of time. The days of Ninja Gaiden, Colin, where you're saying where you're attacking like 100 miles an hour, definitely seem like a thing of the past.
Right. And that's fine. I mean, there's a place for both style of games. I'm not knocking it. You just have to adjust to that, And that is absolutely where it feels most like Soulsy, because every move is very deliberate.
Sure. Yeah.
There's no.
You can have a speed build in the game, though. So we were talking about builds earlier. My equipment is mostly focused on speed. So she just attacks a lot faster. So even if she's getting hit, you can actually attack in between punches of them. So you're just slapping back and forth. You can use really you're able to attack really, really fast.
And you could use that like R1X ability that increases her attack speed also in damage, so you can get like really fast, which is fun. I like all that kind of stuff. Let's talk about a sequel. The prospect. What do we want to see? What do we think we're going to see? Dustin, what do you think?
Well, that is an issue I brought up lightly earlier, is that there are three, well, mainly two. I guess three, because one of my character completely dies. So I'm curious if they do the sequel route, how they'll continue this story, just because a very important decision of like whether or not you're fusing the two races, whether you fuse with Adam, whatever, whether or not that's like the next step. Maybe Eve won't even be the main character. That's what I was thinking. The next game. Yeah. Maybe it takes place. Maybe it will be Nier style, that the next game takes place thousands of years after, or maybe they can even go before in some way. I think that the idea you mentioned of the titular stellar blade could become other weapons or something like that, because you do kind of get a little taste of that with the attacking mode, because her weapon's a little different. But so I think different weapons would be a good aspect to bring in. And I think, like I said, maybe figuring out a way to make the game feel more cohesive in a way that right now it's like linear section, open world, linear section, another open world, end of game, right? Like, how can they kind of bring things together, and just some of those quality of life things, as far as like being able to travel around more easily. But yeah, as far as the story, I don't really know what's next. I will say the ending in particular, and shout out to the space elevator mission, which I absolutely love. That is probably the coolest level in the game. The idea itself of having seeing a space elevator in a distant future is really cool. And then the way they do it's like being attacked. There's like the maid robot that gets destroyed. That was,
they're all sad about it. I was like, I just met you.
Yeah, I know. They're like, oh no, she's dead. It's like I like laughed out loud at that part. I wasn't even mad about it when she got crushed.
Yeah, it's like when Mike, the helicopter pilot, dies at the end of Resident Evil 4.
Mike!
And Leon's like, Mike, no! Yeah. It's like, okay, guys.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I'm curious, like maybe there's something that involves the colony in the next game, because we don't really see or know what that's about. We'd see this representation of Mother Sphere at the end, and that's kind of an interesting area I think that they could explore for the next game.
Gene, what about you?
Yeah, I never really thought about where the sequel would go, but yeah, I think the hair tie turning into different weapons. I actually kind of dig the design of like linear open world. It felt a little bit clean, and it helps them explore different types of scenarios, right? If you want a set piece. If you want a set piece type of thing, and there were a lot of like Uncharted style like set pieces and sequences.
The train, dude.
The train being the most obvious one.
Everyone thought of Uncharted 2 immediately. Everyone.
Yeah, everyone. Like even I thought about Uncharted 2. It's just it's amazing how Uncharted 2 has like dominated like the train section, like, but it really was so revolutionary. Holy shit. Like the way the bodies would bounce around in the train section, like in Uncharted 2. Oh my god, I kind of want to play that game now. Yeah, but it kind of reminded me. So like they can have set piece battles, and I don't. They could brush up more on what they do in open world. Probably just flesh out, more interesting. Get better writers. I think that could be that could help. Just get some help in writing. Which is funny because Nikkei got us a victory, which is a significantly hornier game. If you Colin, Dustin, you've seen it. Colin, have you seen?
Yeah. I had when I researched who Shift Up even was when this stuff.
Began. Significantly hornier game, but as far as I know, that has a really really good story. So it's so a lot of Nikkei or Shift Up fans are like wondering what happened to the writing in Stellar Blade, because the moment to writing Nikkei is actually quite good. So
Nikkei they play it for the plot line.
Yeah, exactly.
Very engaging story.
Right.
Apparently a lot of people do. So I haven't gone far enough, and when I have played Nikkei, I'm really not paying any attention to the story, to be quite frank. So I'm actually there. I really am there for the shootout gameplay. But yeah, just get some better writers. The Dustin brings up an interesting possibility. Will they continue to rip off Nier and have a sequel that is something way unexpected in terms of premise and characters and everything? That could be exciting, but I don't know if Shift Up has it in them to be that bold, because Stellar Blade is a cool game, but it's not as bold as it doesn't go nearly as far as Nier Automata does in terms of themes and characters and everything.
No.
Not even close.
Not even close.
So I don't know if Shifta has it in them to do something like that. I would just be totally fine if it was just Eve versus Mother Sphere the entire game. It just turns out to be Stellar Blade Ragnarok, but instead of Ragnarok taking place in the last 5 minutes of the game, like it's just a whole thing of Eve just flying through space and tearing through other Eve likes, and then culminating in a big old battle with a beautiful Mother Sphere lady robot at the end.
Yeah,
and I would be totally happy with that. I would love that. I'll play the shit out of it.
Colin, same question, but I also want to ask, I guess all of you too, is about potential DLC for this game. Maybe they'll just do that instead of a full sequel.
God, I hope not, man. I fucking hate DLC. I can't stand it.
Well, Sony likes to do it.
Yeah, they do. They love it, and so the audiences love it too. I mean, obviously, or they wouldn't do it. So I'm obviously in the minority there. I think the bigger question is, like, will there be one? And I'm not saying that I'm just curious what the thought is internally. Like, do we pursue this further or not? And I really feel like it's kind of a waste to shepherd something like this and not see further. It's definitely didn't bomb. It definitely sold well, I think. I don't think it's like killing or anything like that, but so it didn't hit and be like, people are like, this sucks. And you get a pretty quick message. I think that it's worth investing in more of this. And again, that goes back to my curiosity on
Japan now too.
Yeah.
Right.
Selling out in Japan.
Right. Exactly. And I do wonder, these guys know what they're talking about. Like, I'm on the Goddess of Victory website right now. And it's just like, I look at it and I'm like, this is actually their bread and butter. And I do wonder if Stellar Blade will end up in something more like this direction. And this is the starting point, or if they can do a little bit of both and explore things. And it reminds me of Infamous, where you're going to have to make a choice when you make a sequel in which a game ends in two ways. And they do. They make this, I think it's right, the good ending happens in Infamous 1, and so that Infamous 2 happens in a certain way. So it's as if the bad ending never happened, and that's a little annoying, but I can get behind that. But I think Dustin's idea actually gets around this entirely, which is just, you can set it somewhere so different and somewhere so far away in time that what happened here doesn't really matter, actually.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Yeah. Or it's like a mystery of what happened. Like it's a mystery how that affected this place or whatever.
Lego Stellar Blade.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Who knows, dude?
Wow.
Can't wait to see the Horizon thing. I want to see what that looks like.
If Shuhei Yoshida was CEO, then we would have Lego Stellar Blade. We would have a Stellar Blade MMO, Stellar Blade multiplayer, Lego Stellar Blade.
Her boobs would be like one to those, those 4 dot blocks.
Yeah.
Those are
Oh man.
Yeah. It's like half the minifig. That'd be good stuff.
Question.
Yeah, go ahead.
First crossover. This game's going to get crossovers, or people are going to cross over with it. And also, crossover first, Nier or Horizon?
Oh my god.
Horizon would be
Horizon.
Which one's coming first?
Nier.
Horizon.
If all the players involved were smart enough, Nier would be the one. Especially
Yeah.
just to exploit it. I didn't really know that.
Well, Nier is deeply exploited already, so it makes
Yeah.
total sense.
Yeah.
Right, and,
Yeah,
and
you
just
would-
to, and I mean just exploit it. What I mean in particular is exploit this particular angle,
Mhm.
just because it presented itself. This is what I always say about Konami. It's like, just get out of the way.
Mhm.
Like, what are you doing? Find good partners and figure things out and
Mhm.
get out of the way. And so knowing the kind of the love between the creator and that game and stuff, and Square Enix would hopefully be smart enough to leverage that. That would be pretty cool.
Mhm.
I hope they don't ruin it in any way. I don't like with many things, like Horizon is clearly on a path to like a primrose path, dude. Like, there's just no doubt about it. It's just way too many games coming from that frame. If they're all true, and I think they are, don't want anything like that to happen to this either. Stellar Blade is really fantastic, though. Might be my favorite game of the year.
Hmm.
I don't know. So far, I'd have to think about it. Rebirth maybe would probably be my favorite game of the year, I guess. But this would be second. Shout out.
Yeah. Dustin, are we getting 2B's outfit in Stellar Blade?
Well, you can already get 2B's hair.
I know.
Like
Well,
one of
pretty
the-
much. Yeah.
One of the haircuts is absolutely just
2B
2B
inspired.
hair directly. But yeah,
There's some
I
like
could
2B and Yorha inspired outfits definitely in the game also.
Yeah. The some of the maid outfits, or not even the maid
Yeah.
outfits, but like the doll outfits or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they're
Semi.
these doll outfits are meant to be like soldiers' uniforms, just like Nier too.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Maybe before we see Nier added to Stellar Blade, maybe we'll see something Stellar Blade in this rumored Nier project. That what was the quote? Like, we may or may not be working on a new Nier game
Yeah.
or something.
We're
is what
doing
he
something
said.
and it may be near, it may not be. And that's like,
Oh, yeah,
it.
involving Saito and all those guys. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's probably Nier.
Please, man.
It's been a long
There's
time. I'm
more
sure
room.
it's Nier.
There's room for another game. In the
Yeah,
Nier
there's only been
lore.
there's been 2 and the mobile game, right? Is that it?
Yeah, well, and there's the Drakengard background too, but
Oh,
it's,
Reboot
Yeah,
of
well,
Drakengard,
wait.
that's what I want.
dude, and if there was a game closer tying those, I mean, I don't know a lot about Drakengard outside of lore videos online, but it's very cool how those games are connected.
Yeah.
I kind of wish I had experienced that firsthand, but
Yeah.
that's a very interesting rabbit hole.
It's not outside the realm of possibility too, although I don't think it would happen that Sony buys Shift Up. This would be so. I think Sony's very much wisely in a don't buy the cow situation. It's like, why bother? We can just get the milk. We don't need to buy the cow. And I think that goes into the NCSoft contract that they signed and investigated with some of the games that they're working on there. But I don't know that it's a bad idea to have a lone presence in South Korea just to attract local talent that you might want to work on console games. Yeah, go ahead.
Here's the thing about Shift Up. Maybe Sony is nurturing that relationship because Shift Up are experienced and successful mobile game developers.
Right.
So maybe in the same way that they kind of fucked up with Bungie in terms of like tapping into the brain trust of that live service, and they kind of messed that one up. Fortunately, it wasn't that expensive for Sony, right? But then with Shift Up, at least they have a little toe in the mobile space, and they can tap into that expertise.
Yeah, that's well said. Because I think it's funny that there's a commentary right now about Sony, and I guess reasonably so, that the sales of Ghost of Tsushima and Helldivers on Steam not being available in countries where PSN isn't available, or what they want to do with that. And you realize that they do all their business nonetheless in these countries where they do appear, but they have this eye towards nurturing developing talent in developing countries. And that's the China Hero Project is a great example of that. A bunch of games came out of that. Sony shepherded all of those games, and they're doing the same thing in India now. And now they're doing the same thing in Africa with the biggest mobile provider there, actually, Carry First. And so I feel like, yeah, there could be something there. I think having an eye for global talent, and it's the same reason why having Haven and buying them was such a smart thing, I think, for them, just to have a presence in Quebec, which is like one of the 3 probably most important places that games are made, really, when it comes down to it, because it's so attractive for talent. It's so attractive for tax reasons. Lots of big games come from there. And so you have a presence there, and you can, like, you know, it's the same reason why Insomniac has an office in North Carolina, by the way. Right. It's to like get people that don't want to move and will otherwise work there, that have worked at Red Storm or Epic or whatever, you know? So I don't know. It's interesting. I think Sony's big enough. I don't want them to really buy anyone, but this is one of the few teams that would make some sense, I think, along with like Ballistic Moon and a few other teams that are obviously Arrowhead, which you feel like would be inevitable, but I don't know.
Wait, who's Ballistic Moon? Who's that?
Ballistic Moon's the team that's doing Until Dawn.
It's
old Superman. It's old. I just say that because Sony clearly was shepherding Supermassive to be a possibility. Obviously, Quantic Dream, they wanted that originally, and that they ended up hating each other at the end. And I think Supermassive was kind of their next attempt to do something and get something going. And a lot of those guys left and founded Ballistic Moon. And so the people that are working on it's not Supermassive working on Until Dawn, but it's a lot of people that did make it. And sometimes it's about personalities. We saw that with the destruction of Deviation Games and how Sony just raided it, took the IP, took a bunch of its talent, and just made another team and kicked everyone else out. And so, yeah, I don't know. We'll see. I just don't really see much value in the team getting much bigger because I just don't think they can manage too many more studios.
Yeah. I don't think they need to get bigger.
Arrowhead is the biggest one that you would think they would want to nail down. But if I were Arrowhead, I would be like, we're gonna see what we can probably get a great deal in publishing another game somewhere else.
Boys, we're kind of coming to the end of our discussion. Any final thoughts about the game you guys want to get out before we head out of here? Anything?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just say I loved it. I thought it was great. I highly recommend it. I hope if you have the money and inclination, that you'll buy it at full price and send the message that this is the kind of game that not only can define PlayStation, which is what it is, but help define PlayStation and its presence in console gaming, but just the kinds of games we want. I really love that even though I think some more of it could have been cut. I don't even want the time to go down with the game, because I think the time, 20, 25, 30 hours,
it was good.
Perfect. You know, that's like, I like games longer than that sometimes. I like games in that pocket a lot. Games a little shorter than that, even 10 to 15 hours, I think you can play around with, like Dead Space Remake. I think that's a really valid place to be too. So I just think it would have been stronger if they just had more meaningful side quests, wasted your time in quotes in just better ways. I think they'll figure that all out. But the kind of compartmentalized, that's what reminded me of Borderlands, kind of like compartmentalized presentation that's technically interconnected, but you don't really go backwards, you know? That reminds me a little bit of that. And it even has a little bit of rage going on in there as well, but that's more of an aesthetic. The first one, it's more of an aesthetic thing, but I don't know. I just hope that it's doing well. I think it's really, really fun. It's one of the great games that I've played this year. And I think it's going to be very attractive beyond just obviously the aesthetic. I think for a lot of people, if they give it a go, as someone who's very skeptical of Soulsborne and my own ability to play those games, I do think that this game is a close first cousin of that genre, but isn't quite in that genre. And that it lacks those things, as I said, that will compel people that aren't tantalized by difficult games. So many different ways to work around that, even dropping the difficulty if you want. Although I will say that when you drop the difficulty, I think it becomes too easy. This is what Jaffe always says about a game in the future using calibrative AI to know you. And it's exactly as hard as you want it to be, you know, like, and neither more or less. I can't wait to get to that space. I will say the UI is really, really nice. It reminds me of Metroid. I said this on Sacred Symbols. I don't know if this resonates with anyone.
The UI is great.
Yeah, and you know how it's like it's a series of dots and lines.
Ticks,
it's
ticks.
very Metroid in my opinion.
Yeah.
So I dug that. I even liked the little barcodes that came up with the South Korean text when you would go to a new place. It's very stylish. I think it could use more polish around the edges. Yeah, better writing, better voice. And I don't know if something's lost in translation there. Probably not, but
no, not at all. Not at all.
Better. Yeah. So there you go. So better writing, better voice acting, definitely from some of the bit players, and just a few. Yeah, just making things blur a little bit better. And you might want to add a little bit of. I can see a Stellar Blade 2 being 40 hours long, but you don't want to do the Final Fantasy Remake to Rebirth thing, in my opinion. Take it easy.
Oh my God.
And
100 hours of Stellar Blade. Imagine that, dude.
yeah, it's just, I mean, some people would love that. Some of you perverts would love that, but I have other things I want to do with my life. So yeah, I really, really highly recommend this game. I thought I was very impressed. You guys know me, when I'm very attracted to a game and I know I'm going to play it, I stop paying attention to it. And so I didn't really know exactly what I was going to get into with this game, but it was pretty great. You know, and is it not of the era when games were games still? And I'm not one of those people that laments like, oh, everything's fucked up. I'm just saying, like, this game doesn't justify itself for any other reason than it's sexy and it's fun. There's nothing else about it. And we don't play The Last of Us, as I've said, at least I don't. It's not fun. It's not like, this is fucking fun. And it's like, it's deep and it's making you fucking existentially worried about things, and it's giving you anxiety, and it's about limitations and violence and all these things. And this game is just the exact opposite. And sometimes you need something just like that, even though I think it has some deep things to say underneath it all, as we discussed earlier in the show. So yeah, this is like an A, this game for me. Yeah.
The thing I'll say, because we didn't touch on this a lot, but there's been 2 surprising games out of South Korea in the past year. This one, of course, and Lies of P, which
from NeoWiz.
Yeah, 2 games that punched way above their weight, and both, because I think NeoWiz, I don't think they've done another game, right? Or
no,
that's a good question. I
can't remember if they're totally fresh.
That's a new studio. I'm looking it up now, but that's a new team. They don't even have a Wikipedia page, so it just goes to Lies of P.
And that's really exciting, just to see this level of talent come. Sure, South Korea clearly on many levels, from a home of Samsung and many other great tech companies, but to now see them really breaking in and making 2 games that just really surprised me in both ways. Just, I think that Stellar Blade, I expected to like. Lies of P, I wasn't sure about, and both these games, I think, both ended up to be insanely good and surprising in a lot of ways. And so, yeah, it would make sense that Sony would want to be there in some degree in a permanent way, whether that's establishing a better relationship with Shift Up, or maybe even investing, buying part of them. I don't know exactly. They'd have to buy some because they're owned partially by Tencent.
Yeah, they have a bunch of different owners. That doesn't preclude anything. I mean, you just have to get everyone on board. In fact, I think you would only need a majority of them to be on board. So if Tencent owns a minority, they wouldn't even really necessarily have a choice. But Gene, you could speak more on this. Like, to Dustin's point about like them introducing themselves to console gamers as a country for the first time, really, this is really about, from my interpretation, like a country that is finally developing a console culture and people that want to make console games in a place that was very mobile and PC centric for a very long time, and has now become generationally financially secure and invests more in these bigger projects, right? So we should expect to see much more, I would assume, out of this country.
Yeah, you're right. Well, in fact, the South Korean government, after the release of Stellar Blade, says yes, we will be committing more resources into bulking up our presence in the video game space. And part of the reason why K-pop and K-dramas are so omnipresent even in the West now, right? And it's been that way for over 10 years now, is because it was an intentional effort by the Korean government to spread Korean arts and culture across the world, to make it global. So they feel that they've done that with music and TV, right? And obviously with film too. Obviously, I'm forgetting his name, but obviously Parasite, right? What was a huge win for the Korean filmmaking community. So they do see video games as kind of like the next frontier, you know. And to your point, Colin, is that, yeah, they've been in the mobile and PC space, but they also recognize that if we want to be globally aware, the global market does still is obviously largely mobile and PC too, but it includes the console space. It includes PlayStation. So that's why, you know, Kim Hyung-tae was like, I really wanted my game to be on PlayStation. It's been my dream to make a game for PlayStation specifically, right? Because it is the global. It's like designing a shoe for Nike, right?
That's kind of that's kind of where it's at right now.
Didn't he buy a PS5 for everyone on his team or something like that too?
He
Probably.
did.
Yeah.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, probably because fucking nobody had a PS5. You know?
Yeah, it's because it's still probably a very niche.
Yeah,
item there. Their behavior reminds me a lot of the way Canada behaves, where Canada invests very heavily in games. That's why there's so many games developed there.
That's true. Yeah.
Massive. I mean, if you pay attention, there's logos for Ontario and Quebec and stuff at the end of so many games because they give you tax breaks and loans. You know.
Yeah. It's like the India for OnlyFans management.
The more and more that comes out about that, the more fascinated I am about that people are having these
fucking crazy
relationships.
that you're just talking to a bunch of like low wage, like third world country workers. Like,
yeah, it's
just like jerking off the whole time.
Dude, it would be so. I was saying, like, if I were younger and I needed like money or like I wanted to like test my writing chops and stuff, like it would be an interesting way to learn how to write dialogue and interact in fictional things, and you're just acting as this woman basically. It's
well, I actually did do that for my friend. I actually did do that for my friend Karen, who was really lazy to manage her Tinder. So I just started swiping for her, and I would just like I would just like screen her messages, and I'd be like, "Hey, baby, what's up?" You know. So that's how I learned how to talk like a 36-year-old Chinese woman. You know?
Riz, dude.
But it's part of the Hallyu, which is what we say in Korea, which is like the Korean cultural wave, you know. And as a Koreans have always been really, really like insecure about our place in culture. Japanese obviously is everywhere in culture, and Chinese the Chinese just drown everyone in culture just by the sheer size of the country, right? And the history. So for Koreans, it's always been tough, you know. Whereas like, you know, even growing up, when I talked to my old Korean family, I'd be like, where are our artists? Where are our movie stars and singers, right? And they'll be like, we have great poets. Like, who, you know? So so it is rooted in this cultural insecurity of being overshadowed constantly by our neighboring countries, and that's why, you know, we went whole hog into K-pop and K-drama, and look at where we're at now. You know, most K-pop is the dominant form of East Asian popular music. You know, so I think they're definitely hoping to achieve something similar, and with the 1-2 punch of Liza P and Settled Blade, it's a good track record so far. So I'm excited. I was really, really pleasantly surprised by Settled Blade. I was kind of looking forward to it, but I was very skeptical. Like Dustin, I was I wasn't really enjoying myself with the game that much. I was like, it's okay. And then when it really started to come together, I was like, okay, I'm starting to kind of see the whole project now for what it is. And as Colin said, it's nice to play a game that's just a game where you're just collecting items and upgrading your shit and fighting enemies, and the enemies feel good and you win, and it's just a fun game. It's just a video game as one would say, right?
It's okay to make and sell those kinds of games still. I just think I want to explore the whole gauntlet of different experiences. And I love that The Last of Us makes me want to kill myself, you know, like I just don't always want to feel that way. I don't always want the weight and gravity. I also just don't always want the pomp and circumstance of having to spend all of this time and energy with a game either. It just was so playable and so accessible.
Yeah, it's in between The Last of Us Part 2 and Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, right? In terms of just being, it adds to the diversity of PlayStation's library, you know?
Definitely.
So that's why I do think that this was an excellent pick by Shuhei for the PlayStation library. It does feel like a PlayStation game. A lot of people call it the Xbox 360 game. I think that's only because, you know, so many of us played Xbox 360 during the era, but it really does also fit nicely with the PS3 aesthetic too. So it really does feel like at least certainly of that generation, right? And we miss those type of games. We love those type of games, and we would still play them all the time. So I do hope that Settled Blade is successful, and it does seem to be doing pretty well. You know, I'm sure there's less anxiety over how Settled Blade is doing than Rebirth. Everyone's, you know, because Rebirth only like 5 people played it. So, you know,
yeah, it's too bad. I don't know what they expected, but it's too bad. It's the sequel of a game that is also a sequel kind of remake of a game. Like you just have had you can't just jump into it. I know people bring up Mass Effect 2 and other games that did better than the original, but I'm like, it's different. You know, it's different, but also that game gave you a way to just skip and make choices. So you would be familiar with everything that happened and then could just jump right in. kinetically.
It's also a different era too. Like we never really seen a game like Mass Effect 2, so versus Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. As great as that game was, and I still think it's my game of the year. There's still a lot of the game that we've already seen before. Obviously, remake, and it's just a JRPG. So, versus Mass Effect 2, where all these choices and characters and like this grand AAA epic, of an RPG. Like Mass Effect 2, it hasn't really aged well that for me, but you can't deny how unique and new and exciting that was back then.
Yeah,
this shit was like the Two Towers, man. This shit was like the Lord of the Rings trilogy, Mass Effect.
Yeah, it's well said.
It was amazing. It was a great time. So that kind of excitement is nowhere near close to even the release of Final Fantasy VII Remake. I don't think it even matches anywhere close to the energy of hype and fandom.
Yeah, I agree.
Dustin, any final thoughts from you? Overall feelings about the game?
No. Mainly, I was just saying the thing about the Korean aspect is cool. Great game, love it. And the thing I'll just say for the audience, because I know this happens on every fucking spoiler cast, is people say, me in particular, I get the target like, oh, it does very negative. It's like that's pointing out the critical aspects is just because we love this game. And so this is the discussion where we can kind of go all out, talk about things we liked, didn't liked. But I think that the important thing overall takeaway is just like, man, for a team that's never made a console game, the fact that they were able to pull this off, and its core tenets, we'll say, are so good that with their next game, just cleaning up some of these aspects, I think it could be something really, really incredible.
Their next game could be amazing. Like Colin already thinks it's an A. Like if the trajectory is going the way it is, then the next one will be an instant classic. Honestly, So looking forward to it.
I agree with you,
real
Dustin.
quick, Dustin. Be honest. You also just feel like maybe a complaint you have is that her breasts weren't big enough.
No, not big enough. They need a slider. So,
dude,
you can.
There's a shot at the end where Lily comes up to Eve and like hugs her, and Micah was like, "Whoa," like.
Don't kill her.
Yeah.
You saved her life already. Don't kill her now.
I know she's gonna suffocate. Anyway, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Brad. I just wanted to make fun of Dustin.
No, Dustin, I kind of echo your statements. We're all talking about this great start, especially for their first console game ever, first action game, as far as I'm aware from them. So, I'm really looking forward to what they're doing in the future.
Can I ask a question real quick?
Yeah.
Because this doesn't need to be a whole constellation topic, so we can I can just ask this right now. How many times have you jerked off over a video game character? Let's be real. Because I said it's the only time again was when I was 14. My Shira and I, when she said me bouncy, I was like, oh, gosh, okay, well here we go, But that was it though. So that was the only time where I was just like, yeah, it'll work for me.
I probably have, but I really can't. Like middle school, maybe.
I can't recall, but
like Lara Croft or something. I don't know, but I don't even know if that would be a good example.
Yeah,
because to the character, I'm in the same thing where I don't remember that specifically. I do remember playing Mass Effect 2.
Oh, Miranda,
and Miranda. Oh, is it Miranda? Right,
Miranda. Yeah.
I was like, Lord have mercy.
Yeah, I mean,
Lord have mercy.
Yeah, that suit, and then you have sex with her in the game, which is incredible. So
yeah,
Stellar Blade 8 out of 10. That's what I'd give it. Great game. Really enjoyed it. But yeah, that's it, I think. We've talked about the game quite a bit. I think everyone's got enough off their chest about this game. No more lingering thoughts. Oh. But yeah, boys, thank you for joining me talking about this. Love talking about games with you guys as always. Super fun. Also, please check us out on patreon.com/laststandmedia if you'd like to hear more from us, get more spoiler discussions like this. We just did Rebirth. We did 2 things for Rebirth, so if you want to check those out, please do. But yeah, I think that's it from us. Unless anyone's got final goodbye or anything, I think we're good to go.
No, I'm good. Thank you for hosting. Appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. Thank you, everybody, for watching. We appreciate it, and we will see you all next time. Take care. Bye-bye.
Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast, is a product and trademark of Last Stand Media and Colin's Last Stand LLC, and is proudly recorded in the USA. The show is conceived by, is written by, and is directed by me, Colin Moriarty. My co-hosts are Chris Raygun Maldonado and Dustin Furman. The show is produced by executive producer Dustin Furman. It's edited by associate producer Ben Smith. All of Last Stand's theme music is by my best friend, Ramon Narvaez. As you know, all of Last Stand shows, including Sacred Symbols, are fan-funded on Patreon at patreon.com/laststandmedia. The following names are at the producer level on Patreon, our highest tier, and we're grateful for your thoughtful and kind contributions to our independent endeavor. Thank you.